Rex will host the Best Ball Golf Outing, seeking golfers and sponsors for the event. Focus for our fundraiser. Saturday, October 26th. It's free to the public. It's a great family event. Come out and enjoy an unforgettable experience where children, young and old, can touch, honk, and climb aboard some of the big rigs, construction, public safety equipment they see on the road every day. A limited number of outside vendors will be permitted to include their trucks at our discretion in the event, $100 a truck. Please call Parks and Rec Department for more information. Sponsors, JP Mascaro and the Southampton Warminster Area Lions Club. Radio City Christmas Spectacular, Saturday, November 16th, from 7:45 to 6:30 p.m. Fees $150 per resident or $120 for non-residents. Join us to celebrate this annual tradition. The trip includes motor coach transportation and second mezzanine tickets to the New York City show. Discount tickets make great gifts. We have discount tickets for movies year-round, $9.50, which is quite a bargain. You can get them on the website or you can come into the Warminster Community Park office. Hometown Hero Banners. The Friends of Warminster Parks is pleased to announce the first set of Hometown Hero Banners have been installed along Veterans Way in Warminster Community Park. Friends of Warminster Park invite all residents to participate in Hometown Hero Banner program honoring our local veterans. For more information on more of these programs or to register, contact Park and Rec office 215-443-5428 or visit the Township website. That's it, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rescator. Mr. McKee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a few announcements. One that I wanted to thank the VE for a great show that they put on for their annual Oktoberfest a couple of weeks ago. Ms. Frescator was there, Mr. McPhillips, Mr. Crowley, myself. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Frescator, that's the biggest crowd I've seen there in many years. It was really well attended. It was a really good shot in the arm for the club, and it was a really good day.
Yes.
I want to thank them for putting that on. I also want to mention that the CEF, the Centennial Education Foundation, is having a dueling pianos event on Friday, November the 8th at 6 p.m. at the Fuge. It's $35 per head, and it's a cash bar, and it sounds like it's a really nice event and a good fundraiser for the CEF, so hopefully everyone can come out for that. Also, what might be a surprise for my wife, our date night tomorrow night is going to be at the St. John Bosco Fair. I'm sure she'll be thrilled. Tomorrow night is it's been all week this week, the St. John Bosco Fall Festival. So if you get a chance, stop by and play a few games. I'm sure she'll be thrilled to hear that. And I also want to take a second to thank the mayor of Wildwood, Ernie Triano. I was down a few weeks ago. Ernie was good enough to take me into City Hall, show me around, and we spent an hour and a half in his office, and it was just fascinating to learn the differences between our township and a seashore resort, of how things operate and how they staff for winter and summer and their operations. And Mr. Kennard, you'd like to hear this. They have several capital projects underway, all direct bill too. I said, I can't wait to tell our engineer he'd be licking his chops. But I want to thank Ernie. It was really nice that he spent the time, and I learned a ton. I really did. So other than that, the only other announcement I had, I thought we would see him tonight, is Jack Diamond's birthday. I want to wish Jack a happy birthday. In case you're watching at home, Jack, happy birthday, and many more. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. McKee. Mr. McPhillips.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This coming Wednesday, September 25th, I'll be meeting with Warminster residents over at the library at 7 p.m. So if you have any questions or concerns about the township, you can stop by the Warminster Library at 7 p.m. next Wednesday. It's coming Wednesday, I should say. Also, coming up next month on October 26th will be the next National Prescription Drop-Off Day. That'll take place from 10 to 2 at different locations throughout the county. However, people who watch these meetings know that every day in Warminster can be a take-back day. Any day you can drop off your unwanted or unused prescription medications over at the Warminster Police Station. It's the green box at the top of the steps. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. McPhillips. Just have a couple things. First, I'd like to welcome the new businesses to town. In the past month, we welcomed Fox Deli Products, which is a wholesale business at 300 Constance Drive. We welcome Windows Doors Unlimited, which amazingly does retail sales of windows and doors at 555 West Street Road. ScanSource, which is a provider of technology products and solutions at 125 East County Line Road, and SET LLC, which does object photography at 670 Lewis Drive. As always, we thank them for choosing to call Warminster home and wish them the best in their businesses here. Also, just want to make a quick note this evening. If you come up for public comment or at any point during the meeting, please make sure to speak into the microphone. this is the first time we're trying the meeting with Mr. Monroe on the phone at home. He's watching on one iPad, the live stream. He's listening on the phone and texting me. And so we might have a few hiccups along the way, just trying to work the communication out. So please bear with us. But also sometimes the live stream can be a little bit choppy, so Mr. Monroe may not hear everything. So I may repeat things if necessary for him. So with that being said, I'm going to move on to our next agenda item. There are no presentations this evening. So we're going to move right into land use matters, public hearings and ordinances. The first one up is Land Development 2019-04, preliminary final being sought for 700 York Road, which is the Lidl development. I'm going to turn that over to Mr. Iannozzi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Here this evening, we have the attorney for applicant, Amy Farrell. She's here to answer any questions that the board has. Does the board have any questions relative to this project and the proposed approval resolution that's been drafted for your consideration? Okay, seeing none, I'll just read the resolution into the record. This is Resolution 2019-22. It reads as follows. Be it resolved that the Board of Supervisors grants applicant conditional preliminary final approval of its land development application, LD 19-03, to redevelop the property located at 700 York Road within the Township C-2 district by number one, reusing the 38,388 square feet of existing building and demolishing the remainder to provide a retail shop, and constructing a new 29,136 square foot Lidl grocery store and a new 6,080 square foot restaurant use on the property. The property's improvements include construction of 370 parking spaces, curbing, sidewalk connection to York Road, lighting, landscaping, and certain stormwater facilities. This conditional preliminary final approval, subject to applicant accepting the following conditions in writing within 10 days of the date of this resolution, and satisfying all of them prior to the final plan's recording. And I'll read them in pertinent part. Number one is complying with all applicable township review letters. Number two is signing the township's required land development documentation prepared to my satisfaction. Number three is the posting of financial security for all of the project's determined public improvements as defined in the resolution. Number four is satisfying all township code, sewer authority, and water requirements that are applicable to the project. Number five are identifying all the project's stormwater inlets and outfall structures shown on the final plan. Number six is obtaining all other applicable permits having jurisdiction over the project. And number seven is paying all applicable project-related costs and fees when due and owing, including any consultant and solicitor fees, applicable impact fees, and fees in lieu, including the required $116,400 fee in lieu payment for waived replacement trees. The property's land development documentation and final plan shall not be recorded until such costs and fees are paid. And be it further resolved that the requested 16 waivers from the Township subdivision and land development ordinance are granted at the Township's request. Do we have a motion to approve the resolution as presented?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Let me make comment.
Yeah, comment,
Okay.
yeah. Go ahead, I
vote
think
aye.
you're going to ask what.
I think
Brian, why don't you go first, Brian?
All right, I vote aye.
Sorry. Yeah.
Oh,
Well, we're not voting.
we're not voting yet, Mr.
Oh, no, it doesn't count.
Pick up.
Yeah,
I did make note of it.
right, yeah.
I just had a few comments. I mean, we didn't have a lot of questions because this has been circling the airport
Right.
for many years.
Could we get like a 30,000-foot view just of what the project is now? Because, yeah, just because that sounded all great, but I want to try to convert it into non-legalese for
Fair
the
enough.
audience at home.
Sure, so you can see up on the screen a rendered plan of the site. At the left-hand, sort of lower left-hand side in olive green is a rectangular building that will be the Aldi grocery store site. Or, sorry, the Lidl, Aldi, forgive me. At the top, sort of center in the gray footprint is the portion of the existing building that will be remaining. That will be converted into retail commercial uses consistent with the township's ordinance provisions. And on the right-hand side, you can see the third sort of smaller olive-colored building that is proposed as a sit-down restaurant of some sort. The sit-down restaurant and the tenants for the existing building have not yet been identified, so we'll need to be moving through that portion of the process. But Lidl is moving forward. I think it's fair to say at this point, Kyle, fast and furiously, on the Lidl grocery store footprint itself. I know this has been a long time coming. We have been back a few times with modifications, and we very much have appreciated the township's willingness to work with us as we've worked through those. One key component of the project that was a big request from the very beginning was that access between this site and the adjoining property remain. We have negotiated that access with the adjoining property owner. We have to finalize those agreements, but that access will remain in place, and it will in fact remain in place even during construction. That was a request of
good.
the township. So that's going to get a little tricky down in there as we're building that piece of the property, but we have agreed that, you know, we will be figuring out how to make sure that that stays open. We know that's an important piece.
So the Lidl is adjacent sort of to the Sportsplex
Yes.
property, and then the old path marks up there, and then a sit-down restaurant here, so sort of just, okay.
Yep.
And Street Road's at the bottom for those at home, so. York Road, Street Road, yeah. York Road, so. I mean, I think, first of all, I'm glad it's here. I mean, I think we started down this path a couple years ago. Looking forward to it. I know things change as business tends to change. But I'm glad that Lidl stuck with Warminster and came back with this idea. And I'll be quite honest, I'm excited about the possibility of maybe a casual sit-down type restaurant pad, which I think is something that's lacking in our township right now. We have lots of fast food. We have lots of great places to eat, but this casual sort of family sit-down doesn't exist. So I'm hoping that it's able to attract some tenants.
And they're looking hard at that. We
Yeah.
heard that routinely from the planning commission, zoning board, all of your consultants, that they'd love to see something other than fast food. So they are working hard on that.
Cool. Mr. McKee, I didn't know that you had.
You kind of touched on everything. I'm really glad that the airplane's finally landing. We're glad to have you guys in town. You're creating a lot of jobs, and most important, that's another empty building that goes away.
Yep.
So I really appreciate what you're doing here in Warminster. Welcome to Warminster.
Great, thank you.
Put the cart before the horse. We didn't vote yet, but we got one so far.
The chairman mentioned Pathmark, and every time I drive by there, I can't help but think about the Pathmark because I used to work there when I was younger, and I was carpooling. I used to chase the carts all the way down that long parking lot. But speaking of jobs and all, do we have an idea of how many jobs this is
No.
going to add?
Kyle, do you know generally?
Yes, it fluctuates depending on the volume of the store, obviously.
Okay.
So we hope that the volume creates a lot more jobs, but anywhere from 40 to 70.
40 to 70, okay. And
So
that's not
40 to
including-
70, just
Yeah,
in
I know.
case.
40 to
people-
70, that's not including the restaurant.
No, this is
Just the store.
That's just the
Just
Lidl.
store, okay.
Mhm.
So,
Right, so once you add in the retail and the restaurant, you're looking at even more.
Perfect.
all right, so.
Welcome to Warminster. We're happy to have you.
Any other comments from the board? I do want to open up before we vote to any comments from the public regarding this project. Ms. Hoover, please. Yeah, I need you to come up though, because they can't hear you. And just so everybody knows, the stream wasn't working great for Mr. Monroe, so he's now moved to another way of watching. He's about 4 seconds behind us.
It's just a small, silly one.
Please, go for it.
I just have heard it pronounced a lot of different ways, and I want to know the correct way to pronounce this Lidl, what is it?
I'm gonna have
It is
Kyle.
legal.
It's Lidl.
Rhymes with needle. is
So-
what
Oh.
The newspapers are saying, so legal.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hoover. Any other public comment on the Lidl project? Okay. Any further questions from the board before we call the vote? All right, Mr. Monroe, how do you vote? 1, 2, 3. Kathy, yell until the.
I vote aye.
There you go.
5 seconds.
All right, 5-second delay. We got it.
I vote aye.
There you go. All right, 5-second delay. You got it.
Wow, this is going to be like Inception.
It's been a long night.
Please go on mute. Thank you. All right. And the rest of the board?
Aye.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. The motion carries 5-0. Welcome to
Great,
Warminster.
thank you.
Thank you. Good luck.
And while you're here this evening, if you would like to sign the resolution? Excellent, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you very much, good luck.
All right.
Okay, next up this evening is a motion to authorize 700 York Road Stormwater Facilities Indemnity Agreement, and signature of the HOP Stormwater Management Application. Those documents have been prepared, and we're seeking authorization to sign them.
And just to comment on that, you haven't seen this too much. You'll start seeing more of them. It's a requirement by PennDOT for you to be a co-applicant on all stormwater facilities located in PennDOT's right-of-way. You've done this before in the past, and other townships do this as well. You'll have the developer, which Mr. Iannozzi's prepared the agreement, take responsibility for maintenance of those facilities, so that will not put any burden on the taxpayers of Warminster, your Public Works Department, to maintain those facilities. That will be the responsibility of the developer, and they have agreed to do such.
Okay. Is there a motion? Have a crafted a motion.
No, just a motion to authorize the signature as requested.
Motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion from the board? Any from the public? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Brian, you there?
Yeah, I vote aye.
Thank you, sir.
There we go.
And chair votes aye, carries 5-0. Thank you. All right. Now we're moving on to item B, which is the golf course irrigation project. I'm going to turn that over to Mr. Schuster.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are 5 items under the golf course irrigation project to bring this to fruition. Item I is consider adoption of ordinance 757, which is an amendment to the Responsible Building Contractors Ordinance. If you recall at the last meeting, you did authorize the advertisement of this ordinance. This is an incredibly limited exemption in that ordinance. In fact, it only exempts this particular project, so it doesn't impact any other current or future project. So if the board is amenable, I would recommend a motion to adopt ordinance 757.
Okay. Is there a motion to adopt ordinance 757? And Brian's. I'll make the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Any questions, comments from the board on it? And I want to give Mr. Monroe a couple seconds before.
Well, while we're waiting for Mr. Monroe, I'd just like to say, I think it sets a precedence by giving them a waiver, basically, by saying that it's excluding the project from the chapter's responsible contractor requirements. So I feel like the process has been too rushed, and I don't like the way it appears, so that's just my comment on that.
All right. Any further comment from the board?
What are the ramifications if we wait?
So if the ordinance were to stay in place, all the bidders that applied before were non-compliant. So if that were to continue going forward, which we assumed it will, because this ordinance really is not designed for this particular work, we would never be able to do the project.
So even if we give it a little more time, we're going to come up with the same result.
That is my belief, yes.
And if we give it a little more time, we're talking about next year to do this project.
Well, if
It'll
we
have
don't-
to be shelved.
If you don't approve it this evening, then yes, we would recommend waiting another year, because we want to go ahead and do the work in the late fall, winter, and early spring. We don't want to interfere with the golf season.
And from what I understand, the irrigation system over there is just about at its end. Correct,
Well-
Kurt?
The irrigation system needs substantial work. It's maintenance intensive. It's also using much more water than it needs to be. The systems that are out there right now are much more efficient.
That's my main concern. I mean, I'm not crazy about granting an exemption to this ordinance, but I see the need that we have to. Because if we shelve this another year, correct me if I'm wrong, but this could cost us another $500,000 a year from now.
I wouldn't want to speculate on how much more it could cost, but prices generally don't go down.
All right.
So let's walk back through the process. You had all the contractors in prior to bid.
Correct. You authorized the bid. The bid did go out. It was subject to the responsible contractor ordinance. We did have quite a few bidders at the pre-bid meeting, 10 to 12. Kurt, does that sound about right? About 10 to 12. Only 4 bid. The information I received is some just chose not to bid based on the responsible contractor ordinance.
Because they were non-compliant, and that's why
They
we
knew
have
they were
pre-bid,
not
that's why we
compliant,
have pre-bid meetings.
Exactly, and some of them knew that they weren't in compliance, some thought they might take a shot, but at the end of the day, all four were deemed by the solicitor to be not in compliance. We've done further research, there really is no state certification program that covers this as required by the ordinance.
particular
This
project.
particular, type of
Right.
work. I believe there was one bidder who tried to use a qualified who they claim was a qualified outfit, but the ordinance specifically says that both the prime and the subcontractor both have to be compliant.
So that was a contractor that was not compliant, that was trying to bring in a sub that was compliant, but
Correct.
both need to be compliant under this ordinance.
That is correct. So based on all of that, it was our belief that achieving compliance was just not possible, and not wanting to delay the project anymore is why we recommend moving forward with the very limited exemption.
As I believe the due diligence was done here. I mean, I know you've been in touch with the board through this process, from the time of pre-bid to, well, we talked about the project 6 months ago, longer than that. We approved, and we've talked about this process in particular in great detail. So I feel that this hasn't been rushed. It hasn't. And my concern is that if we shelve this till next year, it's gonna cost us a heck of a lot more money, and I don't know, I'm not elected here to cost the township a hell of a lot more money. That's not my job.
I'd like to make a comment real quick if I can. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Kinda.
All right. I mean, I don't agree with respect to the timeline 100% with what you're saying. I agree with some of the things you were saying, Mark, but not all of it. I feel the optics on this is that it was rushed because, I mean, when the bids first come up, and we don't have initial access to all the bids because it's a closed bid process and things of that nature. But wasn't that long ago when we were told that, look, if there were some bidders, there's a low bidder, there was one was clearly not a direct fit under the responsible contractor ordinance. And there's some questions about the other two, that all three were going to be tossed. So I understood that that's happened before. We went through quite a headache, with the towing agencies. But then, it went out to be advertised. And now here we are, in the same night, we're voting on approving an amendment to this RCO, the responsible contractor ordinance. And then we're directly turning around, and then we are then going to vote on giving it to that one low bidder that was initially tossed. So I don't like the optics of it. I think, to me, it was pretty rushed, and I think that if we're going to be really tweaking a responsible contractor ordinance, it's going to affect not just this process, but future bid processes. I mean, if we'd like things to be transparent, and I think just from that perspective, that the optics is where my concern is.
Thank you, Mr. Monroe. Any other comment from the board? Any from the public?
What was this
I'm
rushed?
sorry. Yeah. Go ahead.
What's that?
Was the process rushed?
The process for the ordinance change was done in the same process as any other ordinance change. There was a little bit more time on this one because we went through the original bid process. But typically, when you adopt an ordinance, you authorize the advertisement first, which you did at your last meeting, and at the next meeting, you vote on it. So I'm not going to opine whether it was rushed or not. I'd say it's the same process.
You followed the normal procedures like anything else.
The bid process, I think his question is, was the bid process rushed?
Well, the bid process was carried out in any normal bid process. No, I don't believe it was rushed. We went out to bid the first time and didn't get any bids that were compliant. The bid was then altered to be compliant, or to take into account a possible repeal of or exemption of the responsible contractor ordinance. So the turnaround time on the new bid was very quick. It was just a matter of a quick edit, and then change some dates, so.
And you mentioned repeal. This is nowhere near a repeal
No,
of this
this is
ordinance.
just a
Let's-
very
Let's be
limited-
perfectly clear here.
It's a very limited
This is
exemption.
one project that went through the bid process. Many contractors were brought in, given the specs of the ordinance, brought back in with the low bidders. None were compliant. We're at the place here that we revisit this a year from now, which costs us a lot more money. Or do we go ahead with the single exemption, not to be used again, correct?
The ordinance is quite clear. This is exempting this project and this project only.
Only, correct. Okay. Just to be clear.
The only, just to compare apples to apples, is imagine to the towing bid process. The absolute insanity that would have happened as a result of that. That's, I guess, what I'm looking at.
I can't hear him.
Brian, could you repeat that last thing?
Hear me? I got it right the first time. I'm going to butcher it now. What I'm saying is just to compare it apples to apples, if this same standard was applied to the bid process with respect to, or whatever you want to call it, but with respect to the towing companies, I mean, there would have been blood in the water. There would have been it would have been pandemonium. I mean, there already is pandemonium when you're dealing with towing contracts. But if the same thing was applied, I think that we wouldn't be having the same conversation.
Okay.
So what's the alternative? Do we come back a month from now?
I would not recommend coming back a month from now. If the board chose not to take action, my recommendation would be to wait an additional year. I'd be very concerned about meeting the time frame. Last thing we want to do is be working on that golf course when golf season begins.
And I'm concerned about a faulty irrigation system on a golf course that is in tip-top condition right now.
Is the existing RCO, without amending the RCO, are there bids in place right now that would be acceptable under the existing RCO?
No. Well, so under the first go-around, there were not. Under this go-around, we're evaluating under a different set of criteria, but my opinion, no, they would not be. None of these bidders have ever met the responsible contractor ordinance requirements.
So the question is, what's going to change?
I don't see anything changing.
So if you apply the original RCO to the existing bids, then the existing bids would all be tossed out again?
I can't fully answer that question because the second round of bids, if you recall, the revised bid specs came before the board. The board authorized that, which didn't contemplate the responsible contractor ordinance. Therefore, the 4 bids that came in for this second round of bidding were not compared against the responsible contractor ordinance, nor were they required to provide that information because it just wasn't in the bid specs. However, and maybe Kurt or Mike, if you can let me know, were these 4 bidders received, were any of them rejected previously because of the responsible contractor ordinance on the first round?
Can you come up, Mike? I'm sorry, Judy, I know you're...
I'll wait.
Because it's a little hard, because now I'm back on the phone. So the further away from the phone, the more difficult it is to hear. So Greg, I'm sorry, it's very hard for me to hear, but are you saying that the new round of bids that were brought in, were they subjected to the understanding of that this change to the ordinance was going to be passed, and that was the guideline that was used on this existing round of bids?
Correct. That is the bid spec that was approved by the board, and that's what we talked about at the previous meeting.
But the changes to the RCO hasn't been approved yet, so those standards shouldn't have been applied to this bid process.
Well, it's contingent upon the passage of the exemption in the RCO, correct?
Okay, well, this again goes back to my issues with the optics. That to me doesn't seem right. I mean, I know that I'm not, with Bob Iannuzzi, and I'm not a solicitor and all that kind of stuff, but I would think that the pre-existing RCO would apply. So that's part of my issue, is that we're amending the RCO and then we are passing, then we're going to turn around and we're going to provide it, or, assuming that we make a vote on the one bidder, so it feels like we're putting the cart before the horse here. And I think that any of the bidders and the bids that were brought in should have been still under the old RCO until that RCO had been changed.
Yeah, I mean, so
Okay. You
let
want
him.
Yeah, if I may, in terms of the assertion about the cart before the horse, when the board approved the new bid specs, the approval was based upon this notion that there was an effort to get this done this year. So therefore, we did the bid specs contingent upon this board's consideration and adoption of the ordinance, knowing full well that this would be before the board and you can act on it. You can say yes to it and go forward, or you could say no. So what kind of put this on the track that it is for this evening was the time sensitivity and the idea that nothing would change if you gave additional time into next year, other than likely increased cost. So with all that being said, your concern for the optic is your own and it's valid, but the question before the board this evening is whether or not they will consider the ordinance, adopt the ordinance, and if so, then they can go forward with the bid. If not, it's the end of the analysis and the bid and the award falls.
And one other thing, everyone, regardless of how this shakes out, is required to pay prevailing wage.
Correct, that's not an issue.
What do we have for Mike?
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
so the question of the 4 bidders that we had for the second round,
Yes.
do you know how many of them applied under the first round and were thrown out?
I believe all of them were in the first round. So
Okay.
they were all there. None of them met the requirement.
Okay, so these are the same 4 bidders as before?
Same 4 bidders.
Okay, so they'd previously been disqualified.
Correct.
So they'd be, if we had allowed or had continued the responsible contractor ordinance right now, they would be disallowed
Same,
again.
same result,
Okay.
yes. And even into next year, as far as I understand it, it's a 2-year process for them to find some of the requirements with apprenticeship and other things.
Correct.
So we'd be in the same place next year.
Sounds like maybe 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
thank you.
Ms. Hoover?
My question is, this amended ordinance, is the ordinance going to be a full exemption for this company from the RCO, or is it going to require an exemption or waiver of just a certain section of the RCO?
So I'll read the exact language. It's not the company, it's this project.
Mm-hmm.
The language says, "The Township's 2019 Five Ponds Golf Course Irrigation Project is expressly excluded from the requirements of this Part 1."
Of what?
Of this part, well, it's in Part 1 of that.
So it's just one section of the RCO? Part 1, is that one section of the, are you talking about the RCO when you say Part 1?
Yeah, that's the RC, yes.
So there's like 8 different sections of it, as I understand it, and it's just that. It's only that exemption, right? Okay.
For that project for 2019.
I got you. Okay, thank you.
I don't think we could target the exemption any more narrower than that.
Any other questions, comments from the public? All right. Going to then come back to the board. Any further thoughts before I call the question here?
I just think this sets a bad precedent for future bid processes, cherry picking who we want. I mean, and not this board, I'm saying future boards. You know, I just think that, you know, I've got concerns with respect to that, and like I said, with the optics of it, so. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Monroe.
I agree with Mr. Monroe. Same thing. I don't like the optics of it either.
So do you guys have any suggestions?
Well,
I would have kept the RCO the same, and I would have, if those 3 or 4 didn't meet the existing criteria, I would have put the RCO back out again. I think there's been some admission here, and understandably, that there was some time sensitivity, which means, in other words, that we are rushing it because we wanted to get it in this season. Again, I understand that. But I would have gone back out with the existing RCO. Usually that's what we did with the towing agencies. We didn't change anything. We said, you know, resubmit. And they resubmitted under the same, you know, guidelines. And, you know, and I mean, we know where eventually that went. But we didn't even give this process a second round. We basically came back and we said, let's change the RCO. And now here we are.
Well, I think the towing one is kind of a poor comparison because we sent that out a few times and we spent a ton of money in legal fees and ended up right back at the same place.
I agree with you on that.
Now, with this, if we leave it under the existing RCO and we don't take this exemption tonight, send it out for rebid, what happens? Say we send it out now, what happens 3 months from now?
Well, again, I would recommend not actually doing that because the timing wouldn't work out. But if we did, and again, there were non-compliance, we'd be right back where we are. I think what Mr. Otero was mentioning was to set up a program which is compliant, an apprenticeship program which is compliant, takes 2 years. So you're looking at that if there's any company that's not already in compliance. So I would say the prospects of success are not very high in that case.
So basically, the decision we're being asked to make here is, do we want to do an irrigation system on the golf course this year or 2 years from now? Can I ask Kurt to come up and tell me the condition of the irrigation system? I mean, this is a multi-million-dollar operation we have over here that we're overseeing. And that the taxpayers own.
And that's another reason that we make sure that we get this right.
Yeah, so this year, just this year alone, there's been 5 major irrigation breaks.
5 breaks.
So the current system, PVC system, has rubber gaskets that connect the pipe. Those rubber gaskets are failing. So at any point, they could be weeping where you're only losing 20 gallons of water every 20 minutes, and then eventually that'll break, and you can lose 100 gallons a minute. And the pumps just run and run and run. Now you're talking electricity, and you're talking water. On top of those 5 major breaks, the irrigation heads are starting to fail. Some of them are 30 years old. Solenoids are going, pilot valves are going. To replace just the head, you're talking $300. There's over 500 heads on the golf course.
So if we vote no on this and we take this into next year, you're looking at next summer, compounding this.
If we have now, granted the last year and a half, it's been very wet. Haven't used irrigation too much. The last 6 to 8 weeks, very dry. I've had 2 inches of rain at the golf course. I'm using it every night. The problems are starting to mount.
Is that right?
And I've noticed that over the last 3 weeks. Heads aren't coming on. It's a manual. Now I got to go turn it on manually.
And what are the labor costs associated with that as well?
Well, I got to do it.
Right.
Now it's taking me away because I don't have an irrigation tech. I don't have an assistant. So I got to do it. It takes me away from doing chemical applications, killing some weeds, doing whatever I need to do. It's more labor intensive.
Kurt, can I ask, with a system that old, is there any, like, environmental concerns or any impacts?
Well, you're wasting water, first and foremost.
Right.
I've had multiple heads stay on. I water at night. I'm not there overnight. And you come in the morning and first thing the computer will tell me that I got water flowing somewheres. Now I gotta go find it. So yeah, you're wasting water. That's the big thing. The new system, new piping. The piping in the new system is guaranteed for 50 years. They think it'll last 100 years. PVC piping, 25 to 30 years. So we put this new system in,
I know we're talking about the responsible contractor ordinance. I think it would be irresponsible of us to let this go on. And it's not going to get better. And we're looking at 1 year to 2 years now, pushing us down the road.
Right.
And we may end up right back here again.
All right. Any other
And
questions?
I want to say, I'm fully in favor. I was here 9 years ago in favor, 10 years ago in favor of the RCO. I'm fully in favor of the RCO. But I can't see as an elected official here to sit here and say, I'm just, because of this, I'm gonna push this off for 2 years and let this system fail, let it cost us a lot of money, waste water, and taint our golf course. It's a pristine golf course.
I got one more comment here from the ASHA. If this was such an emergency, why weren't we looking at these bids and voting on these things back in April instead of waiting to the last second? And all of a sudden now, it's an urgent emergency that we need to vote on it this immediate second. And you know what? No, it's too late now. So now we have to. This is something that I keep hearing over and over and over again, and I don't like that. I don't like the fact that we are time since I understand where we are now. I guess my point is I would have liked to have had this argument months ago. I would have liked to have been able to say, look, give the RCO another go around, let them put in bids. We've done this many times before where people have put in bids, they messed up their T's and their I's, and then they had to throw everything out and they had to go back to repick before, but not with this instance. And then now it's September going into October, and now it's now or never, and you know what? Now it's too late. So I mean, I still don't change my view on the optics. I don't want to cost the township any more money, but I like I said, I just don't like I don't like how this process goes down on this one. I'm sorry.
Mr. Schuster, is this project on our capital plan?
Yes.
How long's it been on there? Since we revised it 2 years ago?
Probably 2-3 years.
When did you guys come in with the initial, well, you've been talking to staff about this for several months, but you guys came in with a presentation months ago,
I
correct?
think it was March.
March. Okay, so we didn't just start talking about this yesterday. And it's on a capital improvement plan.
But when did it go out to bid? And when were we notified about the bid results?
We authorized bid.
You authorized it.
When did we authorize bid? Do you guys
that would-
remember? Mike?
Would've been over the summer sometime, June or July.
It's Mike Atara again. I believe it was July, but we started the process, and Brian, I think the important thing is we had to have a consultant come in and work with us and develop the plan. So it wasn't something that could be done, inside of a month or 2 months. So this was a process that started early this year, and with the objective of getting it approved for September. And here we are, in that time period. So.
Gotcha, thank you.
Okay.
All right. With all that said, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, wait. We had public comment. Any further comment from the public? Come on up, Bob.
Good evening, Bob Welsh, Holloway Avenue. How much does it cost for a green? For a green on the golf course?
If one gets destroyed, he means.
Right. Yeah, if the sprinkler heads fail one way or the other, and you had to replace the green,
Be honest with you, give you the exact number on that.
roughly?
It's roughly, you're talking $4,000 or $5,000,
Okay.
to get in there and do it the right way.
Just for people at home, he said $4,000 or $5,000. You can't hear him.
The replacement of the grass on the green, if you lost it.
So you gotta look at it this way. The greens are the #1 asset of any golf course.
Right.
You lose your greens, you lose your golfers.
That's why I'm asking. So if you have these sprinkler heads fail, and you lose a couple, 2, 3 greens, we're shutting it down. All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, going to call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay. Brian?
Good night.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank
Can
you.
you hear me?
Yes, we recorded the no. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, moving on to item 2 under this project would be consider award of bid 2019-8, the golf course irrigation project, to George E. Lay Company for the base bid in the amount of $1,227,260. Again, there were 4 bids. This is the lowest bid. The specs were reviewed and found in compliance. Also concurrent would be, with awarding that bid, would be approval of the contract, which is in your packet.
Okay. So, I'll make a motion to award that bid. Is there?
Contract.
And contract, I apologize. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right. Comment?
Just to reiterate, this will be done under prevailing wage.
Yes.
Certified payroll.
Yes.
Okay.
Any further comment from any board members? I want to make sure that. Okay. Any comment from the public? All right. I'm seeing none. I'm going to bring it back to the board and call the question. All in favor of awarding the bid and contract?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
And the chair votes aye, passes. All right. Number 3.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Third item is to discuss the financing of this with a approximately $1.2, $1.3 million project. That is something simply that the Gulf Fund cannot sustain all by itself. And just to make it crystal clear, I know we've talked about this in the past, but just to make sure it's clear to everyone, these are not tax dollars we're talking about. This is all self-contained in the Gulf Fund. So even though we're about to talk about taking on debt, that's still going to be repaid by the Gulf Fund.
Money in, golf money out.
That is correct. So here we have Zach Willard from PFM, who's going to go through some options that were considered and discuss a recommendation. This was a late update to the packet, but it is printed out and you have it in front of you. It's this sheet right here, this packet right here, if you want to move along.
Okay, great, thanks, Greg. Again, Zach Williard, good to see everyone. I don't think we've been here. It was about 2 years ago I looked in my folder since the last time we were here to talk about a borrowing. So as Greg said, we're going to talk about funding the project that you were just speaking of, so we'll go through this handout. Please feel free to ask questions so it's helpful. If you flip to the first page, okay, this is an interest rate chart that we like to show you when we're here. What this is the tax exempt version of the 10-year treasury, so it's a benchmark when you're talking about municipal financings because you can borrow tax exempt, all right? And if you look at the top half of the chart on the far right, you can see we're literally at the lowest point in interest rate history, okay?
Zach, do you think that could go up in the next 2 years?
I'm not gonna predict any interest rates, but yes, that's a possibility.
So we're getting a pretty good rock bottom right now on the financing of this project.
If you look at the bottom part, you can see
So
we
not
just
only
missed
are
the
we-
bottom.
It's about as close to free money as you're ever
Not
going
only
to
are we
get.
taking a chance delaying this 2 years, that it costs more money to have it done, but it costs us a hell of a lot more money to get it financed, possibly.
Possibly. So, yeah, to that point, if you look at the bottom half of the chart, you can see about 2 weeks ago was the low point, all right, on this chart. Now, most of you probably heard the Fed yesterday cut the overnight rate by 0.25%. You know, that was already baked into the market, meaning that, you know, the drop that went down to the floor, people already anticipated that. So there wasn't a whole big movement or anything yesterday. Because again, we're talking about borrowing over, you know, an 8 or a 10-year period. When you hear about the Fed, that's the overnight rate. So that's the shortest term rate. So they're a little different, but in theory, they all correlate, okay? Bottom line, rates are very low, all right? Now, the only thing that throws a little bit of a wrench into that is when tax reform went into effect at the beginning of 18, it did take away, you know, some interest from local banks to do loans with municipalities simply because the tax rate was lower, so there's not as much benefit. All right, 2 years ago when we did a bank loan, that was the height of the bank loan market. Things were very hot. Banks wanted to loan. They still do, but they're not quite as aggressive. But you're still going to get great bids if you decide to move forward with this. If you flip to page 2, this is the breakout of the township's debt. Okay, you have the debt service fund, columns 2, 3, 4. All right, in columns 6 and 7, you have the golf fund. So that's what Greg was just talking about, is that, you know, this loan would be funded by golf course revenues. All right. Now, what we're going to show you here in a second is we're going to show you 3 options of how this might look as far as debt service numbers go and how it's going to hit the golf course budget. All right. And it's important to note that in columns 6 and 7, that's your existing golf course debt. All right. And what we're going to show you is issuing both on a level basis. So that's kind of like if you did a 10-year mortgage and you have the same payments every year. And then we're also going to show you what's called a wraparound structure. A wraparound structure, you know, in Pennsylvania is the most common way that townships, boroughs, school districts, counties fund projects, simply because it has the lowest budgetary impact. All right, so you know, that looks like it's probably going to be the right answer, but that's for you all to decide. So take note that in column 8, you know, currently in the 19 budget, there's something like $346,000 worth of existing debt, and then as you see, it goes down to 330, 300. And then in 2023, it goes to 0. So you're in a unique position where you can wrap your new debt around the existing debt.
2024.
2024, sorry. Yes, 2024.
I wish 2023.
One year early.
That's been a long time coming, reducing that debt from that golf fund, so it's been a long time coming.
So, you know, here you are with a new project, kind of at the right time, both as far as interest rates go and as far as the structure of your existing debt. So you do have a unique opportunity here. So if you flip to page 3, so here's what I'm talking about. So if you look in column 5, that's the same existing debt column for the golf course fund that we just showed you. All right, so it should be the same numbers there. What option 1 is the 10-year level debt structure, right? So the project fund is about a $1.3 million deposit, so that's the money that you have for the project. We're assuming that we close this transaction later this year based on the timeline that Greg and John have laid out for us. So when you look in column 6, you see the new level debt service of about $168,000 a year for the 10-year period. So So what you do is you take that 168 and you lay it on top of column 5, and you wind up in column 7, okay? Now, see the little red boxes that we put in each one? What we're trying to show you is that that's really what you're comparing, is those 4 budget years. All right, so in the level structure, you're gonna go from $346,000 in the 19 budget up to 430, and then up to 470,000 thereafter. So that's a big jump, right? That's going from 340 up to 470. So you're gonna need to have a lot of extra golfers out there in order to pay for that.
Yeah, and if I can jump in, this was a large concern for us. It really depends on the weather. Some years this will be very easy to absorb, and some years, like last year, would be very difficult. Which is why we want to consider the other options. But
Yep. So then what we're showing you in the next 2 options is what we call the wraparound structure. All right, there's 2 versions of the wraparound that we're showing you here. So in the green, all right, this is a 10-year wrap. So the point is it's still a 10-year loan. So when you look in column 8, notice for the first 4 years where you have that high existing debt, we're going to have interest-only payments on the loan, okay? And then after that, starting in the 24 budget year when that golf course debt goes away, you can see we wrap in the new debt, all right? It's still a 10-year loan. So over in column 9, compare the red box to the red box in the blue, and it's about $120,000 less in those upfront budget years. So much less of a budgetary impact. Now, because the loan is more back-end weighted, the cost of that, okay, is that you're going to pay about $70,000 more in debt, in interest, over that 10-year period. So the pro is very minimal impact as far as the upfront budget goes. The con is you do pay more over the life because it's back-end loaded. All right, does everyone get that concept? So just like everything, there's a pro and a con. Now, the unique part that I'm talking about is the fact that your existing debt is so short that the wraparound doesn't have much of a cost. I mean, $70,000 is real, all right, but when you divide that over 10 years, and when you compare it to the budgetary impact, that's small. A lot of places that don't have this opportunity, they might have debt, a township might have debt that goes out 20 years. When you try to wrap around debt that goes out 20 years, then there's much more of a cost to doing a wraparound structure. Here you don't have that. And then the third option, which is the least costly, okay, if you look in column 10, this is what we call a tight wraparound structure. So this is only an 8-year loan, all right, but it does the same thing that we just talked about, where as in the budget years 20 through 24, you're going to go up to about $370,000, all right, instead of when you compare it to the blue 400.
If we take that option and that basically ties our hands for doing any further capital project for several years, wouldn't you say, Mike?
Yeah, at that level.
At that level, because I know there's several other things over there that are on the burner. Yeah, so, well, we can talk some more. I have some more questions.
So that's a good point. So the reason we showed you the 2 wraparound structures is just that, okay? The red is going to be the cheapest, all right? It has the least amount of interest. And again, we're going to bid this out and get all the interest rates back. These are hopefully conservative. But yes, assuming these were the right rates, you're going to wrap right up to where your debt is now, where that cost is now. And so you're in at about $370,000 all the way through the 2026 budget,
Right.
okay? In the green option, you were about $350,000, for those few years, and then it does drop down to $250,000 in the 24 budget year. So I don't, that would be the difference between the green and the red is you got an 8-year shorter loan, but you're going to be kind of wrapped up to the highest amount. The green one in column 9, it's a 10-year loan. It does offer a little bit of a drop off after a few years if that's something that's desirable.
All right, so I need to hear from the people that run the golf course and their thoughts on that, because they're the ones that are in the township manager and the finance director that are managing this.
Sure. I mean, when you look at the cash flow, certainly option 1, as I spoke earlier, gives us some concern. So I would definitely recommend going with a wraparound. I do gravitate towards option 3. If you notice, the total interest expense is basically identical to doing the 10-year level debt. Also, it does shorten takes 2 years off the level debt option. The con of that is that it will be an additional $25,000 per year in the golf fund. I do believe that's sustainable. We have a growing fund balance there. Everything is on the up and up over there. Last year, as you all know, was not the greatest year because it wouldn't stop raining. We've had a good rebound this year. We're looking forward to a good year next year. So I don't have any issues with a $25,000 per year increase, and I certainly would love to see that debt fall off or end in 2027 versus 2029. So I gravitate towards option number 3.
And Mr. McKee, to your point, let's say there is another project that comes up, I'm sure it will, 3 years from now or
Well,
something.
that's my
like-
concern.
So, I guess the way you think about it is if you look at the red, you kind of chop off the next 3 years. So at that point, you'd be to, what's an 8-year amortization or a 6-year amortization. So you would still preserve the ability to come back and wrap around it in the future if that's
basically
helpful.
refinance those years that are left if need be.
We
If we
could,
needed more
yes.
additional capital for
Probably,
projects.
yeah, refinance at these rates may not be,
Right.
the best thing to do, depending on the
Right,
rates at
but
the
it would
time.
be a possibility.
I just don't want to lock us up that we need to have a major project that needs to be
Yeah.
done there 3 years from now, and we don't
And-
have any money.
And I think maybe I can alleviate that. We don't have any major projects at the golf course on the horizon.
Right.
There is always capital
Maintenance.
work going on there, and some significant work, but that's captured through their regular operational budget, and there's still gonna be ongoing capital work every single year. That part's not gonna change. It's a great golf course, but it does require constant maintenance to keep it in tip-top shape.
And one point I didn't mention that you just jogged my memory about is when we go through the competitive RFP process, we will ask the banks to bid this so that all of the submissions are gonna be prepayable at any time without penalty. So again, a few years down the road, if there's the ability to prepay the loan, or you choose to do that, you can.
We're in Warminster here.
Okay. Just offering that as a.
But also,
Another
it's something to consider. However, when you look at the interest rates, prepayment may not be the most prudent thing to do. And Zach, I'm sorry, did you mention the interest rates that these models are based off of?
So this assumes a 3.5% for 7 years and then a 4.5% thereafter. Again, those are just pretty ballpark conservative rates. I think we'll definitely do better.
And we'll be locked into those, they're not variable.
Yeah, so here's the thing. When you do a bank loan, typically there's a fixed rate period, and then after a certain fixed rate period, it will go variable. But the key is to have a low cap rate.
Right.
Just like we did a few years ago. So, we'll push for the lowest possible cap rate that we can get. And given that we're talking about 8 and 10-year structures here, it shouldn't be a very high, it's not a 20-year loan where there's a lot of risk for the bank. So these are the 3 options that we came up with Greg and John to review. Happy to answer any more questions about them if you have them. And then finally on page 4 is just an estimated timeline. Okay, we can kind of move as fast or as slow as you want us to. All right. So if you'd like us to start the process, this assumes the quickest timeline, which would be we would start moving things next week, sending out a bank loan RFP, getting bids back in order to present them at your meeting in October for approval. All right. So that is as quick as we can go.
When's the Fed meet again?
The Fed meets every 6 weeks. There is the anticipation that there could be one more rate cut baked into this. The bigger market mover right now is trade war, China tariffs. So, when the next tweet comes about what's going on there, that will be what moves the market. But couldn't tell you which direction it's going to move it. And then, if we decided to move a month slower, you can do that, just kind of scoot the timeline back. But we can get you money, basically by a little bit before Thanksgiving, if that's what the desire is. Thoughts, questions, comments?
Any from the board?
No, you've answered my questions.
Any questions from the public? Kenny, please come up.
Good evening, everyone. Ken Hayes, 850 Lingo Drive. Column 8, green, red box. None of us got to see it. I know it was the last minute thing, but
I apologize.
it would be nice if that was for the residents watching television and us here to
It'll be
actually
on
see
there.
that.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Ken. Any other?
I have a question. Who typically handles our RFPs?
For financing?
Yes,
Since I've been here, it's been PFM.
okay. And what is the cost would be involved for the township.
So the cost would be not to exceed $15,000. Is that correct, Zach?
Correct, yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? All right. Refresh me, do we already have a motion?
Yeah, I'll, if the board is so inclined, I would recommend a motion authorizing PFM to prepare and advertise an RFP in accordance with option number 3, and provide analysis for a fee not to exceed $15,000, and to authorize the advertising of the associated ordinance.
I'll make that motion. Is there a second?
I'll second with a comment. Again, this is golf fund money to repay this loan, not general fund, not raising taxes to pay for it, golf fund money contained.
Correct.
Make that crystal clear.
Correct.
Any other comment from the board members before the vote?
No, I'd like to just thank Mark for pointing that out. That's a good point.
Thank you, sir. Any further comment from the public before the vote? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the chair votes aye.
I said
She
aye.
she
I'm
said
sorry,
aye.
I
She
just-
said aye.
Yeah.
I saw the motion.
Sorry.
Yeah. No worries, we're good. It's a 5-0 vote. So, thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
All right.
PFM.
Okay. Item number 4, Mr. Schuster.
Thank you. The fourth part of this project is consider an agreement with Hydro Designs for golf course irrigation system. This would be for construction oversight. The cost of that contract is $38,000. Hydro Designs has been with us throughout this, through the design specs, reviewing of the bids and so on. This would be for them to oversee the construction and provide the necessary feedback to us if there's any particular issues.
So before we get into any comment, let me just get the motion on file, and then we can have comment. So the motion would be to,
Authorize the agreement with Hydro Designs.
all right. Is there a motion to do so?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so now open to comment. Any comment or questions from the board regarding this? All right, any questions or comments from the public? All right. All right. Just checking Mr. Monroe's text. So with that, I'm going to call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Brian?
Sorry about that. Aye.
All right, thank you, sir. The chair votes aye. The motion passes. Thank you. Like I said, fits and starts tonight, so bear with us. We're learning a lot about this process. We might move the phone next time. Move it down here. All right, so we're now on to item number 5. Mr. Schuster.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The last part of this project is to consider engagement with Eckert Siemens for bond counsel services. Previously, when the township was with Eastburn Gray, they did have in-house bond counsel. Our solicitor, current solicitor, does not. Based on his recommendation, I went out and obtained a proposal from Mark Stein from Eckert Siemens, and you can see his proposal in the packet to take us through this process.
All right. Can I get a motion to engage Mark Stein with Eckert Siemens Chair and Mello?
Did you make the motion?
I asked for a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Any comment or questions from the board?
Seeing none.
All right, seeing none, any comments or questions from the public? All right, I don't see any, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And chair votes aye.
Brian was right on time.
Carries 5-0, and I just saw that Brian wanted to make a motion. Apologies, Mr. Monroe.
Thank you, Zach. Thank you.
Exactly.
All right. So we're now done with land use, public hearings, and ordinances. Moving on to the next part of our agenda. That would be public comment. Township residents have the opportunity at this time to comment on a non-agenda item and subject to the 5-minute guideline as recognized by the chair. We are going to have another public comment at the end of the meeting, which we can talk about anything. So, first up, Chief.
How you doing?
Sir?
Good. Mitch Shapiro, Chief of the Warminster Fire Department. Mr. Crowley, thank you for addressing that earlier. One of the reasons we're here. I don't think the residents understand the gravity of the position we're in right now. When we came to you over a year ago now to start the study, which we did, now that that's back and we're moving forward, but unfortunately it's just too slow. You know, the idea that we're gonna wait another year now for the grant to hopefully come back, assuming we even get it, implement 5 firefighters. By the time this goes through, the hiring, well, we need 10 firefighters. And at the rate we're going, 15. The idea, the volunteer fire service is failing at epic levels, nationally and especially in Warminster. We're getting out during the day with 1, 2, 3 firefighters. Not only dangerous to us, but to the residents. We're counting on support from the other paid fire departments to come and help us. We're feeling it. Chief Gottschall's doing the same thing. His guys today, 3 guys on a call. And we're starting to see it on the weekends. We're down to roughly 15, 16 active firefighters in our 3 stations. For the time being, Station 92 has been closed and moved those firefighters to 90 to get those trucks out. I'm looking at other options if I should move them to the bookends. But we're making do with very, very little. And if we keep going down this road, there'll be no volunteer fire service. The idea that 5 firefighters is going to solve our problem, it's not. It's going to be just a Band-Aid. This is going to keep snowballing. We're killing the volunteer firemen, no pun intended. We had 3 calls today, 3 yesterday during the day. And let's face it, probably at this rate, 80% of our calls are fire alarms or CO detectors. We'll call them nuisance calls in our industry. But we have to respond. What if it is real? We don't show up. The extra 5 minutes, we did the study that said we're off Firehouses Arbor within our national response time. If we're going to wait for a surrounding community to come in, I don't want to stand here one day explaining why somebody's family died because we couldn't act on this, because we had to take 2 years and studies and conversations and studies. I'm just not politically correct. I don't understand all this when I hear you guys arguing. Identify the problem and fix it. We're trying that, and it's not working. You know, the state just passed in the House, from what I heard, it didn't actually pass. It passed to go to vote, that they're going to do a 4-year, $16,000 college reimbursement if you serve 4 years. A start. Somebody needs to look at if we're going to go career totally or if we're going to go combination, which is the reality of it, what we should be doing. But everybody keeps telling us it's a great job you're doing. We're tired of being told how great we're doing and somebody actually do something to help us do our job. You know, I had a resident say to me the other day, oh, I saw a fire company with a boot on the corner. Why aren't you guys doing that? I said, boot on the corner? When's the last time you saw anybody collecting with money? The police officers don't do it. Public Works don't beg for money. Why should we have to beg for money to volunteer our time to protect the residents? We just need support from the township level or the state level. You know, everybody watching at home, if you're over the age of 18, you can be a firefighter. We ask you to come out. We'll give you the training. We'll give you whatever you need. But people watch this. You talk to them. I was talking to a young man the other day in his 20s, and I was throwing ideas that I had to kind of entice firefighters' incentives. If the township with the school board said, we'll wipe your property tax off. You know, let's say the average homeowner's $3,000, $4,000, and they maintained an active level. A heck of a lot cheaper than paying a fireman. He's like, I could give up my job cleaning at night. I would consider that, but I have to work 2 jobs to support my family. We're not an affluent community where everybody's home at night and where people are working 2, 3 jobs, their kids are going to school. The time commitment needed, it's not when I first joined. The time commitment is incredibly large now. I don't know how anybody could start out and want to be a volunteer fireman. It's going to survive up north where they're running 100 calls a year. It's just the model that we have here for 700, 800 calls a year just doesn't work. You can't go out all day and spend 3, 4, 5 hours away from your job and have your boss pat you on the back and say good job when you come back.
Chief, I think you're touching on what I've kind of been talking about for the past couple of years. We're not a sleepy little town anymore. We are a small city.
We are not. Everybody
we are
around
a
us is
small
paid.
city. And we have to take that mentality going forward.
Yeah, you know, to kind of jump when you said about being in Wildwood, down there basically the same time in the Crest, spoke with the fire chief down there about their membership. All their firemen get fully paid benefits.
Oh yeah, I was talking
medical
to
benefits.
Mayor Triano, same thing in Wildwood.
You know, and their requirements are pretty high to get this. But then again, real money. If I'm paying $1,200 a month for my family for benefits, and it was given to me, that's an incentive. That keeps somebody's wife from working. That keeps the second job. That keeps somebody who would love to volunteer but doesn't have the time. And it also justifies it. It's kind of like a little bit of a part-time job now. It's a give and take from both. You know, if the state kicked in and actually paid for a college, a 2-year community college for 5 years, or maybe at 10 years, they did a 4-year college. maybe you could attract some young children or young people to come in and do this. But nobody wants to address the real problem. We either got to take real money, you're talking $1 million, 1.2, everybody's worried about whether their golf course green turns brown, but no one seems to be concerned if their house burnt down tomorrow morning. Well, there may not be a fire truck there.
Huh.
It may be an extra 5 minutes for Southampton or Northampton or somebody else to send their truck there. And then I'll be standing here again saying, I can't do anything about it. I just don't, I'm just so frustrated from the chief level that I don't know what else to do to make things better.
And I know you and I had an hour-long conversation a week and a half or so about it, and I'm gonna turn to the administration, because I just don't know what the answer is.
I know the answer.
Well,
I just want to make
Brian,
I want to make
fiscally.
one comment
I'm
before
sorry.
you do that real quick. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, I just want to say too, like, I mean, we've seen this with, it's the same thing with the police department applies to you guys. When the police department's numbers drop to such a level, as your level has dropped, you're right, not only is the public at risk and at danger, but it's also an increased pressure and an increased personal safety danger for not just the police officer, but for you as firefighters as well, because that means less people around you, shoulder to shoulder, going into those fires, putting yourselves at risk, being there if something bad does go down. So I completely sympathize with you, and I would love to find a way to work with the entire board and getting you guys the help you need.
Appreciate that.
And safety is a really big issue for firemen and for the residents at this time. If you've got ideas, help you any way we can.
Oh, plenty of them.
Right, but that's where I have to turn to the administration and ask, where are we?
So where we are is, I've instructed Mr. Velton to start working on a SAFER grant. One of the problems with the SAFER grant is they will not pay for any firefighter that's currently on the payroll. So if you go ahead and budget for it right now, you can't go ahead and get it retroactively. So my outline right now was to take a SAFER grant application, bring it before the board. It does take some time to go through that and then line everything up for career firefighters, paid firefighters, starting in 2021. I do understand exactly what the chief is saying. I can't disagree with anything that he said. There is a major problem. The only other alternative that I can suggest right now is foregoing the SAFER grant, of course. That would mean implementing something in 2020, an increase in the fire tax millage, and some significant adjustments there and how everything is allocated, establishing all the things that go along with having career firefighters, and so on.
And that's where I'm going. We can all sit up here and say, you guys are the greatest, we want to give you full-time firemen, but when push comes to shove, 3 people refuse to raise their hand to give you the funding that you need.
Agreed. And also, this goes back long before anybody sitting in this room. I've been chief for the past 13 years and almost 24 as a chief officer, and I've been coming for years. We thought we had a program in place when Jim Kruger was the fire marshal. Unfortunately, it fell apart and due to financial constraints, it never came back. And it should have never failed in the first place. We didn't get any slower. The calls didn't go down. The demand didn't go down. And here we are again. It's just as embarrassing for us to come here with our tail between our legs saying we failed.
And you shouldn't have to.
But it's nationwide. You know, I don't want to beg on a corner for a quarter, but I think the reality is, like the fire tax, we've talked about this for years. You want the quick fix? Raise the fire tax. The school board has no problems raising money. And nobody has a problem paying it. They want their kids educated. My kids are out of school. I want to pay the school tax. I want a good community. I also want to leave, when I leave the community and go to work, I want to come home knowing that my house is still there. My family's still there. You know, I don't want to worry about that. No one worries about calling 911. We have a great police department. They show up. We've now contracted with Central Bucks to do ambulances because we're having problems. They show up. But we're like the bastard stepchild, pardon my French, that no one really seems to care about because no one really deals with the fire department until you're there. You know, we were in an alarm last night. The woman was all frantic. She came flying home and into her driveway at 90 miles an hour, and it was a nothing fire alarm because she never had to deal with it. We see it every day, the car wrecks, the fire calls. And not all of them are anything exciting, but we still have to be there to do something to rectify the problem.
Well, my eyes have been wide open to it for over a year now since Chief Godshaw gave me a good tongue lashing. And no, I'm glad he did, because it was an eye-opener to me. Like, we got to do something here. And if it means raising a fire tax.
Yeah. You could raise the fire tax, hire those inspectors, take the money you were paying for that, and have firefighters tomorrow at minimal cost.
Sign me up.
You know, what's it gonna be to get that $1 million? We talked about that. 20, 30 bucks a household?
I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but yeah, I mean, it's not.
Realistically, you could have a fully paid department for under $50, $60 a household. And, you know, if I went to every house and said, could you please give me an able-bodied person to volunteer for 50, 60 bucks? I guarantee you I'd have enough money to have a paid fire department in a couple days. Because no one wants to do this. Or if they do, maybe they will step up. Maybe hearing this, somebody will say, I really want to do this and help the community instead of sitting on my hands.
So how about when the township manager's in the process of crafting next year's budget, that you put something in the fire fund for an increase in the fire fund to give them the funding that they need, and let the board either raise their hands or sit on their hands.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm not saying not to do the SAFER grant. But
Yeah,
if
and
it's
do that.
five,
And
if
do
you
that
get, if
too.
you can hire
And do
five
that.
now,
And do
maybe
that
you
too.
can hire five, because the reality is, Hartsville still do it. I'll let Chief Gottschall, you know, talk about his plight, but I'm seeing it on the weekends now. And we talked about during the study, the older community. Our firemen are all getting older. We got a lot of guys that are going to be retiring really soon, myself included. Like, the days of dragging a hose down the hall get less and less every year. Well, we don't want to be having heart attacks doing this. And the young people coming in aren't doing it. I can't tell you how many firemen we have that their children don't want to do it. I mean, I was lucky my son was a third generation to do it. But a lot of guys' kids, they go off to college. Well, he did too. He went to college and did this. Other people's kids are like, nah, I've seen dad leave the house too many times. I don't want to sacrifice my family. So what do you think the other people are saying in this township? I'm not sacrificing my time to come volunteer to do this.
And not to mention, the guys that don't work in town, don't work near town, they can't
Them
answer
days are
calls
gone.
anyway.
We have zero people working in town during the day. The one person that was coming just left to go into the city.
Where do you stand with the state at this point? Are they listening to the plight of the fire?
There's an
companies?
article every month that people talk about it. Everybody talks. Our state senator put a comment on our Facebook, great job, guys. And I kind of gave her the same answer I gave you. I can give you a ton of ideas. But everybody says, oh, that's a great idea. Back to the next problem on the agenda. We're not a big voting bloc. No one cares about us anymore.
Well, they should, because safety is a big issue, and like you said, you don't want to be on that call where you're too late getting there.
All I can tell you guys is put your money where your mouth is, cross party lines, and do the right thing. Because the right thing is going to come back, and the wrong thing is going to come back and bite us in the butt. Every township around us has moved forward in the 20th century. I guarantee you, the 17 people watching this, but the other 30,000, they live here, and 15 of them moved up from the city in the past 20 years. They have no idea we're volunteers. We say all the time, but they don't know. We had a guy give a tongue lashing to two of our guys for stopping for coffee in the ladder truck on the way back from training, how they were getting paid to get coffee.
Wow.
He had to explain to him that he was a volunteer firefighter. This guy also happens to be a career firefighter in Philadelphia and still volunteers here, but had to explain to him that we don't get paid. And he had no concept that we did this for free, zero. It didn't even compute in his brain when we were done the conversation.
I'm sure most of our residents, hearing the plight of the fire department, that they would be willing to pay $50 or $60 a year
I would hope.
to ensure their safety.
I'm a resident here, and I tell Mr. McKee all the time, I don't want to see taxes increase just as much as anybody else here. But the reality of it is, we've gone long enough without raising them. The township's going to go to crap, and no one's going to want to live here when we can't maintain the infrastructure we have. We'll end up looking like some of these other third world countries soon. It's up to you guys.
I get it.
I think I went over my 5 minutes by about 10.
That's okay.
All right.
Chief
This is an
Gottschall,
important
it's all
issue.
yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
Eric Gottschall, Fire Chief of the Hartsville Fire Company. Been working with Mitch, obviously, in the township, same, two departments. We stepped up when they were having some issues with staffing. It is starting to take an toll on our department as well. The increased calls, volume is very difficult. Unfortunately, Chairman Cawley, when we heard the comments that were made last month, it did seem like, it was sort of blown off as far as what
The intent,
the
yeah,
reality of the situation is.
The intent of my comments was not to blow it off, but to not tie it to other things going on in the township. I didn't want it to make a cause and effect. And I apologize. I see how the comment made you feel the way it did, and that was my fault, and I'm sorry.
Right.
But that was why I tried it, and My bad, so.
No, we're glad to see that you addressed it right away. One of the other things that's happening is we're not in as difficult a situation on the weekends as Chief Shapiro is with his. We still seem to be having some good turnout. It is volunteer, so at any given time, you could have 5 people at the kids' soccer games or football games or whatever it is, and it's just not going to happen at that moment. We do have a unique situation that's helping us out for the daytime calls, which is going to come up to you guys in the future and could affect the response of the Hartsville Fire Company, and that is the sale of the Water and Sewer Authority. We have been very fortunate that we've had an agreement with the Water and Sewer Authority for the past almost 15 years to allow employees to leave for work during the daytime and supplement our fire crews. These are members of our fire company that are trained to the national levels and all that. Should the sale of the Water and Sewer Authority go through, that could adversely affect us significantly with 3 firefighters during the daytime. It just puts more pressure on the system. It makes it another thing that you need to take this seriously and act on it sooner. We don't have time. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
So, Mr. Schuster, I would support you crafting a budget with the paid firefighters in there. Do I have consensus of the board to instruct Mr. Schuster to craft a budget with understanding that we're asking Mr. Schuster to put significant increase into the fire fund?
So,
Yeah, go ahead.
no
Comment
issue
on.
doing that, just a couple things that you should be aware of, more than a couple.
Yeah.
Number one, there is a mill rate cap on the fire fund, so it's not unlimited, just like
Right.
the general fund, it does have a cap. Second, there is a secondary cap in the mill rate for the fire fund, and I believe it's only up to 1 mil can be used for paid firefighters
Okay.
and associated expenses. I'm not saying that's going to come into play, I just wanted to make sure that you're aware of it. Third, of course, if we hire firefighters, we can't retroactively go after a SAFER grant. And the last thing is, had not expected to be doing this as soon as right now. Thought we would have a little more time as we applied for the SAFER grant, so there's a lot more details that would have to get worked out. But yes, I can put together those numbers for you and a recommendation.
Thank you.
Everybody support that?
Absolutely.
Yep. Mr. Monroe, you good?
From what I could understand, it was very garbled, but yes, I am.
Okay, so we appreciate your flexibility in crafting that, and we thank the chiefs for coming tonight. Ms. Hoover, please.
Well, that was very moving, and I really feel for the firefighters. It's a horrible situation. I came up here to say that some of you know that I totaled my car
Oh, no.
on September 2nd, coming home from Center City, and at Jacksonville and County Line Road, a young man did not yield the green light and turned right in front of me. He's as close as you are, Greg, and it was no time to even brace myself. So I just want to commend the Warminster Fire Department, and especially Officer Rick Kutzer, who, while I was in that dazed state, standing in the middle of the street, he kept me safe, kept very professional, made me feel confident that everything was all right, and he took care of everything in a very professional way, and I just want to commend the police department and the chief is here for that.
Yeah.
Okay?
Are you doing okay?
Yeah, I didn't even have to go to the doctor.
Oh, good.
I
Good.
bruised my knee.
Well, thank you for bringing good news. I really
Thanks,
appreciate
Judy.
it. Any, come on down.
Hi, everybody.
Good evening.
At the August meeting, we were told a plan for Wawa's Access Road on Orange Road, Street and Roads, was submitted on or about July 15th and was being reviewed. With all due respect, we feel that the neighbors have waited more than an appropriate time to find out what the plan is. And with all due respect, we have had to live with large trucks traversing the access road all hours of the day and night. Oh, sorry, but you're busy with something.
No, go ahead, it's public comment.
Are you listening at all?
Yes, I am, ma'am.
Okay. With all due respect, the neighbors have had to look at large trucks parked along the access road. And with all due respect, we would like to know what or if this Board of Supervisors plan to do to protect the quality of life for the constituents in this neighborhood.
Hi, and good evening. Yes, Wawa's proposal was received, was reviewed. Wawa's consultants met with Township consultants, analyzed the proposal carefully, identified what works and what does not work. This evening in executive session, we reviewed Township consultants' recommendations on what changes need to be made to that proposal. And I've been authorized to confirm those changes will be made to the proposed plan. And then thereafter, on October 3rd, the amended stipulation that will be filed with the court will be presented to the board.
October 17th.
Oh, excuse me, I had October 3rd. Okay, October 17th. The amended stipulation will be presented for approval consideration and authorization to sign. And at that time, we will make that public. And that will
Well, with
also
all
be.
due respect, can anybody
Excuse
know
me,
anything
at
ahead
that
of time?
At that time, then that would also be submitted to the court to be made a binding order of the court.
Also, I have something here that came from the neighbors. They were not able, there's some neighbors that were on Mason, were not able to make it tonight because unfortunately it's back to school night. But this is what they asked me to read. If you want to know their names, I will give it to them, to you privately. Just ask me. In talking with people familiar with zoning, we have been told when a commercial property abuts a residential zone, one of the concerns in the commercial lighting is the commercial lighting spilling over into the residential area. Questions usually asked by the zoning board are: 1, will the proposed lighting spill over to the residential zone? 2, will there be lighting shields installed to protect the residents from having lights shining into their yards or windows? And 3, will there be light emitted beyond the commercial property line? Now, here are some pictures. I don't know if there's enough or not. Okay. You have to ask them. They're all the same pictures, just, I think they gave a copy for everybody. And the neighbors on Orchard and Mason feel that they are living in a fishbowl since a group of sheds on the rear property line of 555 Street Road, which is immediately west of Wawa property, were removed. We have no solid fencing or landscape to block the Wawa gas pumping area lights and also the noise of the vehicles. While the township is renegotiating the zoning contract with Wawa due to the access road, we would ask you to address the serious lighting problem we now are living with in your negotiations. And I can vouch, the lights do shine through ever since the sheds have been met. And if you sit and go to Wawa, you can see all the homes clearly. There's nothing blocking. And when you sit on Mason Road or at Orchard in that area, in the homes, in the front yards, or in the houses even, look out the windows, you can see everything at Wawa, including the sign at Street Road. You can see the cars on Street Road and everything. And if you want to, the pictures don't do it justice, but drive by and take a look on your way home. But if something can be done, they would like to have that fence extended along that's been put in. Wawa should extend it all the way down, if possible, because that's what was negotiated in the beginning. And then Mr. Schuster didn't want to continue it further than Wawa. But it would have protected the neighborhood. Any questions?
I don't think so at this time. I think we need time to look at this. I can't speak eloquently about these pictures yet, so I don't want to. So I do want to find out more.
Yeah, and if you want, we do have from the zoning board, when they went for the conditions that were granted to them for this, I can show you in there where they said down to the end of Wawa and the next property. At that time, Mr. Brando owned all the property down to the church. But
Okay.
Mr. Schuster didn't want to make the excess costs for Wawa, but the neighbors are now suffering.
Well, let me just clarify, since you've said that twice. You wanted to require fencing extended on property not owned by Wawa. I told you that wasn't possible.
Well, it was done by Wawa on the bank and in CVS, so if they could do it on two, they could do it on the other one.
Well, yes, with agreements, and that's what they
Right,
did.
but that's all we asked for is the agreement,
We
and you
cannot
did not
force
want to do
Wawa
it.
to put fence on other people's property.
Wawa did it at the bank, and they did it at CVS.
They did it voluntarily as part of an agreement. We have no leverage right now. We have no
At
mechanism
the beginning, the
to force
agreement
them.
was to go all the way down. So there was nothing, and you had also promised us that when new people came in, it would be put down.
That is
But
absolutely,
it's
I
not
remember
fair
very
for.
clearly, I did not promise that.
I will have some of the other people that were there because we know what was said.
I know exactly, you can't promise
don't-
something about a future buyer who we don't even know exists.
I agree.
Would be willing
We
to go ahead and
agree.
extend fence.
We agree.
I did not make that
You
promise.
defended Wawa at the nth degree because you wanted to get it over with, and you said you didn't want to hear any more about it, just get over with. You didn't even want to know any of the history. That's how you
I
came
love
into it.
hearing about Wawa.
No, you didn't. When you first came, that's just how we got into it. They brought the fence. They told us this is what's going in, and you said take it or leave it, which is fine. The fence is there. We're not saying about that. But at the beginning, it should have been put all the way down. And Wawa gave $40,000. So why don't we use some of, what did you all do with that $40,000? Because the last time you hadn't used it. You told us. So take the $40,000 and put the fence down. Or have you used it privately and we are not aware of it when we've asked about it?
I'm not aware of us using it privately. Mr. Eisen and Mr. Schuster, if you could look into this and let us know what. So, I mean, I can't expect them to, off the cuff, know exactly what occurred here, and I don't either. So I'd like to know before I start going off. You know what I mean? I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
I get it.
Another suggestion would be,
Yes.
since we're negotiating so much and changing the things that the zoning board had looked into and gave for their conditions, that maybe this should be referred back to the zoning board to review everything that's going to be done, because they're knowledgeable of everything that was going on, where none of you have been here, and the people that are doing the negotiating right now, none of them know what even happened, and I don't think they even care. So maybe it's time that we get back and care about our community and care about the residents.
We'll get more out of them. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Come on down. How are you this evening? Yes, nice to see you. I don't see the sign though.
Where's the sign?
Thank you.
Okay, well, I retired and
Ah.
a tree came down.
All right.
All right.
Obviously not the way you wanted to, or you would be.
The top is the letter October 3rd, 2018. Okay. 11 months it took for the tree to come down. I want to thank everybody that signed the petition that I went around the neighborhood. I love the neighbors, and they were very cordial to me and supportive. And they signed, 52 people signed that that tree should come down. As it was being worked on a Sunday, it wasn't taken down by a tree service. It was taken down by a landscaper who happens to be the ex-wife of the wife of 305. I'm Doris Guest. I live at 321 Evergreen Avenue since 1976. My mother told me to buy my house, and I did, and she wasn't wrong. I've been happy, and I'm so glad the tree is not threatening my life anymore. I've enjoyed from August 29th, 11 months after October 3rd, 2018, it took to get that tree down. And the last, I want to tell you about this image that I saw. The trunk was 35 feet high, and I watched, and there was a rope tied to the end of the top of the trunk. and the guy cut the wedge into the tree trunk at the base, and then it was free. And as it was wobbling back and forth, heading towards 305 Evergreen's house, they pulled the rope. And guess who was on the end of the rope? Mr. and Mrs. Fluck, the owners of 305, and the ex-husband and their son, one of their sons. And thank God, one other person that was a tree, came with the tree man. But anyway, thank God, it went down on the ground, and it's being cut up, and there's still some left there, but it's almost gone. The radon, which the township wants to have exhausted above the roof lines,
Yes.
is not, it's got knocked off.
Is that
And
the
you have a
second
picture
picture?
there.
Is that this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's very close to my living room window, and I like to have the fans. I want to enjoy my property. In the back of my property, 50 feet from the back door, is 2 old swimming pools, above-ground swimming pools that he has, and the ex-husband says that the owners, property owners, can store whatever they want. Well, I don't like this. 3 years ago, Mrs. Fluck told me that they were going to take care of that. Now, I don't know if the original letter that was sent to them by the township requested that that be taken away or cleaned up. It leaves little swimming pools for little breeding grounds for mosquitoes. And if you noticed on the news, 5 people died of eastern equine encephalitis in Michigan. And it's not, they can't fix it, you know, you get bit by one mosquito and you're going to go, that's it. And I would like to be able to enjoy my backyard and watch my little dog and sit down back there 50 feet from my back door. But this is not a good thing to have. And those pipes, those old support pipes, they're hollow. And their mice are breeding in those hollow pipes. I would like them gone. And she told me that they were going to clean it up 3 years ago, and it hasn't been done. And he told me that when his father came back from the shore vacation, that they were going to rent a dumpster and clean it up. That hasn't happened either. The folks that live next door to me, they have like 3 barrels of yard trash, and I've watched for the last 8 weeks or so, ever since I first came to you, 8 weeks or so, to see whether they go out the back door, and all it takes is a little bit to drag them out to the, the curb to be taken away. We pay for it, get rid of it. No, they're still sitting there like 3 barrels of it, and it's just not a nice thing to happen. I hope that you can, let's see, Gary Smith, when I went and told him that the tree was down, he went and took a picture of it and everything, and he said, "We're done, aren't we?" And I said, "Well, I don't think so," but it was vacation, Labor Day, so I said, "No, we're not done. I have to take this over to him and see if he can do something about the rest of this, I don't know if I'm wrong, let me know. But I haven't looked for the ordinances on taking away a mosquito farm and a mouse farm. I would like these 2 things at least, to be taken care of. And I would like a copy of the original letter that you sent them in October of 2018. The one that Buddy came out right away. And October 16 of 2018 was when I saw the arbiter pointing out that these branches are going to go onto her, or her, into her yard, to Mrs. Fluck. But that was, I never saw the original letter. I would like to know whether he had asked them to take away these old swimming pools and hazard to my health. Gary Smith suggested that I go to the Board of Health. Well, we had the guest dairy bar. I worked with the Board of Health. I'm not interested in running up to the Board of Health. I think the township should do the job that they're asked to do and look out for me.
Right.
I want to enjoy my property.
Right, let me, I primed this up for Mr. Schuster, so I'll let him address it, but I'm sure that he's got some insight.
Thank you for the information. What we're looking at here could be a violation of the property maintenance code. So what we're gonna do is refer it to our L&I division. They'll go ahead and investigate it, and if there's enforcement action necessary, they'll go ahead and take that action.
Okay. I asked also to be carboned on future communications that you have.
Well,
Because I was left in the dark, thinking that it was all gonna be taken care of, and evidently it had just fallen through the cracks.
Well, the second thing I was going to say is that if there is a possible violation with the health code, we could also make that referral to the Board of Health. I can't commit to copying you on things, because when we do investigations, we don't just copy everyone in the world on those.
Well.
But anytime you do have a question, feel free to come to my office or call, and we can give you the best update we can. Additionally, I also don't want you to come to every single monthly meeting and wait that long.
I'm tired too.
So I'm just saying, you don't have to wait for every monthly meeting. You can come to my office or call the office whenever you want. That way you don't have to wait 2 or 3 weeks to give us this kind of information, and we could take action even sooner.
Right. You take action, and I will see the action that you have taken. Thank you very much.
Thank
And I
you.
thank everybody that signed the petition, and Daniel McPhillips, thank you for listening to me also. And that's a good thing that we have the opportunity to be here or to be with you in the library. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, any other public comment this evening? Come on up.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Kevin Dust. I work for Warminster Municipal Authority. I am a firefighter that Tim Eggy's lets us go run during the day, so there is a problem with getting firefighters out. That's not what I'm here about tonight. You guys keep talking about the police
Can you talk
department.
to the mic so
Yeah.
they can hear you at home? Thank you.
You guys keep talking about the police department and, their pension and all like that. I get it, you guys have to do something, and look like it's gonna be on our backs. So to save their pension, my pension is gonna be frozen. I've been working 27 years to get where I wanted to be with the authority, but I still have to do 29 to get all the way into my pension. And then every year I stay longer, I get another %. I'm not gonna get that. A lot of guys aren't gonna get that. John has over 30-plus years in. George has over 45 years in, okay? We're not gonna get there. We're gonna be sold so they get there. So I hope when you guys do something, that you do remember us and do something for us.
Number one, no decisions have been made, but it's interesting you brought that up because I had the exact conversation with Mr. Schuster about it yesterday morning concerning your pensions.
Well, it's a shame you weren't at the meeting last week, because he held a meeting, and for us all to talk, it was last Wednesday, one during the day, one at night. I came, stood up, and talked, and I appreciate that, but it would have been nice if you guys were there, because I would be sold you guys out.
I was there.
Okay, I didn't see you.
Yeah.
I'm just saying,
I sat right behind you.
Okay, you're behind me, I apologize, I didn't see it. But, guys, we have to do something. Selling this, I hope you guys don't, but I know you gotta do something. But if you do, please, don't forget my men. There's a lot of us.
Well, I have a major concern with your pension because I worked hard for my pension too, and I understand
Correct.
completely. I just had the conversation with you yesterday morning about it, correct?
And if you're gonna do something, you wanna do something for the guys, throw a couple years in, give us what you're giving them, 2.5. We don't get that. You wanna do something good for us, and you're gonna sell us, please. Think about it and talk to the guys, meet with the guys, stop over. You wanna see the place, stop over. We're more than happy to talk and show you the place. All right, guys?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there any other public comment this evening? Come on down.
Good evening, everybody. My name is John Berner, 320 Grape Street. I've been a resident for over 50 years, with the authority over 30 years. At the presentation the other night, which was wonderful, bring everything to light for the community, about the dire needs for the township. We appreciate this. Everybody does. I speak to the neighbors who can't make it. Hopefully they're watching at home. One of the things I noticed was the presentation only was limited to a few things. Online had a lot more information projected through the years. I think it was 160 some pages that were on there, which I glanced at for hours. Some of the things I did notice was, if that was your plan for the future, there was something missing from the budget. Park and Rec. Didn't see anything about Park and Rec. Nothing at all in there for their projections, their projects. You know, something, if we display a budget, it's needed. Projects are out there, what's going to happen in the future, what you need to spend the money on. Now, sprinkler park, it's wonderful, great idea. What about the other things for the park itself? Any other things going on? A building for Park and Rec besides the trailer that's still there? Any other projects for them? Love to know.
Yeah.
I've got quite a list.
You want me to go now? Because I can answer the Park and Rec
Yes,
part.
please, go ahead.
So, we have a number of different funds in the township. The fund which is causing us the concern right now is the general fund. Park and Rec has its own individual fund with its own millage associated with that. So that fund is actually not, how should I put this? It's something which can be dealt with by raising or lowering the millage rate there. That's why it's not part of the equation. There are capital needs from the park. It's put out in our capital plan, and we're funding those every single year. So that's why you didn't see it. Likewise, you didn't see anything about the fire fund. You didn't see anything about the library fund in there, and a few other funds that we have. It's because we're concentrating on the general fund. That's where the problem lies.
I know you have to match the grant that was given, because that had to be pushed through, otherwise we lost that money. Where that money comes from. That's the part that worries a lot of the neighbors, myself, a lot of people. Next item would be Shenandoah Woods. What's going on with that? The money was put out there as a deposit. Have we learned anything else about the Shenandoah Woods?
At the moment, we are in litigation over Shenandoah Woods, litigation which was not initiated by the township. So we're pretty much at a standstill at this point, and that's really all I can say, because it is a matter of litigation.
Right. Those lawyer fees keep compounding besides.
Unfortunately, yes.
That's all part of it, yeah.
But can we go back to the park project, where we've issued a draw-down loan that'll be paid for through the debt service fund, correct?
Correct, yes.
Correct, to pay
It will,
for
yeah.
that. The money in and money out goes through the debt service fund, not the general fund.
Okay.
That's the current plan, yes.
Stormwater management. We have a lot of things on the books that DEP requires. Some detention basins. Any work
MS4 plan.
for, upgrades in our system, for the failing system in many neighborhoods? And where's that money going to come from? That's another concern.
Yeah,
Is there a timeline for that?
I talked about that for the past 2 years. The MS4 plan we adopted 3 years ago now, that we were forced to adopt, and it's an unfunded mandate from the federal government. Guess where that's going to come from? The folks.
Yeah.
I mean, of course.
Yeah.
Huh. And that's an unfunded mandate.
Is there a timeline, a requirement by DEP for
That
the?
I don't know. That would be a
So right,
question for
I mean, it's a
Mr. Kemp.
5-year plan. Right now, I don't have a timeline for the funding of that.
Is there a time when that has to be installed, the systems that are necessary for?
That I don't know.
No, there's a timeline for everything, but it's out pretty far. It's already started. But you gotta remember, I think that's part of what's being transferred over to the WMA as far as the beginning of the year. I think that was in motion. So as of now, they have enough time to still address things, so it's not like something has to be done by the end of this year.
Well, it's not with the authority, it's still with us right
It
now.
technically still is, but that's something that they have to build something by the end of 2019 or end of 2020.
And that's gonna require a stormwater fee either by the
Yeah, that-
MUA or the township.
Yeah, right now they have,
It's going to be, I mean,
it's unfunded, so all the townships are trying to figure out how to pay for
yeah.
things, so.
How to
And to
come
be
up with
honest
that
with you,
money.
it's gonna be a fee either from the township or from the MUA.
That's raising taxes.
Yeah.
Another line item in there for something that's necessary.
And that's not, correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, will that go in the stormwater fund, or if it's done by the MUA? But if it's done by the township, it'll be done through the stormwater fund.
So if it was done through the township and the board desired to do it through a fee, which I believe is probably the appropriate way to do it, then yes, it would be a separate fund.
Right,
'Cause
not
when you-
the general fund that's in,
Yeah, when you levy a fee.
lack of a better word.
When you levy a fee such as that, it can only be used for stormwater.
And it'll be revenue neutral. They can't, tax then only, they have to spend we would have to engineer it, give an estimate, get out to bid, and that tax almost be retroactive. That tax would be just to pay for that facility, not to generate revenue to then do something else. So
Right.
each project's planned, designed, and then that fee, and we haven't worked that out yet. I know the WMA has worked on that a little bit. A lot of the townships are working on that, but that hasn't been finalized yet. They haven't made a decision on which way they want to go on that. But it has to be revenue neutral. You can't be, assessing a fee and then pocketing the money and spending it later.
Right.
These are all really good questions, by the way. They are.
It's if I can't get here during the meetings, I'm watching it on television.
Right.
Have for years. And finally got the nerve to show up.
No, these are all very good
Stick my
questions.
face in. Municipal complex. It was talked about. Any plans that were drawn up for it?
No.
Nothing at all?
No.
It's
No.
just an idea that's been batted around?
It's an idea, it's a concept. I mean, certainly we're in an aging facility here. The police side is definitely inadequate for their needs, but we're not in any discussions. There's no plans, there's no architect, there's absolutely nothing.
We have a standing committee for that. We meet periodically, I would say now. I mean, we were meeting monthly, but since last year, we're meeting periodically. Mr. Motto's on the board too, that we've discussed, okay, if we take the next step, we engage an architect, which we haven't done. If we were to do such and such, how would it affect the debt service fund? Because that's what it would be paid for out of. Everyone thinks they're gonna sell the authority and spend $20 million on a building. No, we're not. That's why you have a debt service fund. That's why you issue debt. But they're just things that we kicked around, no action's been taken, no recommendations to the board. This is way out. But we've had discussions, but the board, we haven't met in months. I mean, it's been months. But we did do some tours of other facilities, Ben Salem, where was the one we went to?
I went to Doylestown prior to the
Doylestown.
construction of their new,
Did some tours of other facilities. And doing tours of other facilities, you can really see the need of our police department. I don't know if you've ever been over there or not, but I'll be quite frank with you, that building's a dump. I mean, I don't know how these guys even work in there.
It's,
I mean, there's a need. There's a definite need that we're either gonna spend a ton of money renovating buildings that are outdated, or the alternative. But it's not like we're doing something tomorrow, but we need to have a conversation now.
Right.
For 5-6 years from now.
Haven't heard anything, that's why
Yeah,
I've.
but no,
I've
that's a
brought it
great
up,
question.
and
It's a great question.
Now, if the sale goes through for the water and sewer, and you have your money in your banking money or separate fund that you're gonna start feeding out of, is there a way that you're able to transfer some of that for some of these projects?
I'll leave that to Mr. Schuster.
so it really depends on how things are structured, and I'll give the same answer that I've given at a few different sessions, that any money that is put in a pension fund or an OPEB fund stays there and can't come back out. So but I think what you're talking about, the rest of the money that's in a quote-unquote savings account, for lack
Right.
of a better term.
Right.
It would, of course, be invested as best we could. We are very hamstrung with state law on how we can do this, so it has to be invested very conservatively. So 1%, 2%, you're looking in that range of what you'll get. Are there certain protections and restrictions that can be put in place to protect that money and make sure it is not transferred, or make sure there's a process that has to occur before there's some kind of transfer? The answer is yes. But the bottom line is, there is nothing that a board can do to protect that money that a future board couldn't undo.
And you stated that during that process, and I do understand that. I do understand that. And Kevin touched on the pension funds. That's, if you were to dissolve the authority, would we become employees of the township? And if so, would we be treated the same as them with their pension, their, as I termed it, aftercare, in a way, like you said, OPEB?
So I have absolutely no idea how to answer that question. I mean, if there were to be a transaction, there could be an instantaneous transaction where you never actually are part of the township, it just goes to another entity. There could be a transaction where part stays with the township for a period of time. We're nowhere near those kinds of answers. So I just can't answer that question. The only thing I'll just say in general is the board has continually expressed that they want to make sure that the employees for the municipal authority are treated fairly and to the extent possible made whole. That's a process to make sure we go ahead and do that. We haven't had the necessary discussions to even, to figure out how that would happen, let alone make a firm commitment.
And that's the conversation you and I had yesterday morning.
So do we have a long-term plan for the township? I know that you were looking for something down the road. I don't know if anybody's been working on anything.
Well, that's what's posted on the website. That's the financial model on how this would all work. So yes.
And that would be your plan, how that works
That's what
out.
I'm recommending, yes, that would be the financial plan. As it relates to the general fund and the solving of those issues, yes.
Right. It's a big debt that you owe. I mean, it's tough. I know it's tough that nobody wants to raise taxes. I think regardless, if you did come into the sale, you're still gonna need to raise taxes for.
Yes, we are, yeah.
For looking out for the future.
Absolutely we are.
Well, one of the things I've said repeatedly is that this is about the general fund. The model that's created has out to 2025 with the general fund taxes being the same as they are right now. However, when you look at other funds, whether it be in the debt service fund to take care of the park project, or in the fire fund if you want to establish a fire department, or the park and rec fund to pay for the additional labor and materials to handle the expansion of that park, yes, there are other needs that are out there. So no one should think that, taxes could be held stable across the board. We're solely dealing with the general fund with the transaction we're discussing.
Okay. Mr. Crowley, you mentioned Shenandoah Woods again.
Yeah, Shenandoah Woods. For example, that's a good point. I've said that a couple times too, is even if we go down a path with the authority and a sale, it does not preclude future tax increases. In fact, tonight you heard about the fire fund. That right there, if we go ahead and do that, that would be at the end of the year. We have to, I think we still have to make a move there with their workman's comp. So there's definitely that. Shenandoah Woods, and Mr. McKee will tell you about this. If Shenandoah Woods gets out of litigation and we're unsuccessful in our myriad attempts to get them to give it to us for free, which I don't think they will, but we keep trying, and say we have to close the purchase, well, you got to finance the purchase. You got to pay for the purchase. That's millage. That's going to be raised. Having the millage available to raise it is key for the boards in the future. And I don't want to speak for the boards in the future because my term ends in December. But I think for those individuals, for those up here with me tonight, they will have those opportunities. But I don't want to go ahead and say, yeah, doing A is going to solve this problem forever. No, all it does is it makes right the problem that started 10 years ago, finally closes that loop. But the future, the future, you know, if you want nice things, you have to pay for them, right? So
Absolutely.
I agree with you 100% with where you're at on that.
I have to budget for my home
Mhm.
and for the future.
Right? You don't know when your roof's gonna leak, you don't know when a hot water heater's gonna go,
That's exactly it.
right? My wife's car just went, guess what? They don't care. I have to find the money to buy a new one. I'm with you 100%. I expect, and this, I speak only for myself right now because I don't want to speak for anyone else. I expect that regardless of what happens, I think that definitely you'll see an increase in taxes in the very near future. And I expect to be voting for one this year. I just don't know what that combination is going to look like. But I think you're right. It's reached a point where, you know, we're not a sleepy little town anymore, right? It's 32,000 people. It's a city.
Right.
You know,
We gotta fix this leaky bucket somehow.
agreed.
It needs to be operated and looked at as a city.
Yes,
And some people have a hard time with that, but it's reality.
yes. Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah.
I've been here for,
Well,
like
you've
I
seen
said,
it,
over
yeah,
50 years, watched the growth, deal with it every day, see the growth, the demands.
Yeah.
And it's something that has to be done,
Yeah.
like it or not. I appreciate your time. I do.
appreciate your questions.
It's not an easy thing up there.
I hope you come to more meetings and ask questions.
It's,
I'll see you at Sunday's meeting at Altomonte's.
Yeah, well,
there we
That
go.
turns into a township meeting. I just go to get my lunch.
It does. It does. Well, it's a community,
Yes,
and everybody in the community needs to stand up.
absolutely.
I would love for the police department to be able to alter their pension somehow in order to help the community.
So would we.
They are part of it. And it's not an easy thing to look at when you speak of something like that.
Yeah.
Believe me, it's not. We have hopes. Let's hope we can get there.
It's interesting, my son is in the same union I am, and he got his pension statement recently. Our pension that I have the good fortune of collecting out is 59% funded right now. I know in a very near, not too distant future, they're gonna start taking some of my benefit away from me.
Yeah.
And that's not a state mandated pension, it's a private building trades pension.
Yes,
So, I understand. We took a tremendous hit in 2008, tremendous.
a lot, everybody did.
Yeah.
Everybody did. We were fortunate enough with our employees and Mr. Hagee's help that we got ourselves much healthier.
So I totally understand your pension situation, believe me.
Thank you.
I'm gonna do everything I can to make you whole, because
Thank you.
I get it, believe me.
And if there's a way we can help you, we certainly would.
Thank you.
thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate
On
your
that
time.
same line, he's asking a lot, really great questions.
Yes, it was.
Are there going to be additional informational meetings scheduled for the public?
So I'm not planning on any at this time. There were a number of questions that came up, just like this gentleman was talking about, with very specific things, which we just don't have answers to. So I think as we go down the process a little further and we start to get some of these hard answers, I think it'd be appropriate to have those sessions then.
But I think some of this stuff will be touched on. We are gonna have a budget workshop as we do annually, correct?
That's up to the board. At some
Mr.
point,
Chairman, can we have a budget workshop?
At some point, I'm gonna present a budget, yes.
All right.
I'm sure we can.
We
work
do
something
annually,
out.
normally our
Yeah.
first meeting of the month of November is budget workshop.
Right.
Preliminary is second.
That'd be November 7th,
Right.
right?
And that's where a lot of this stuff is addressed, debt service and long-term projections for debt service and
Right.
park and rec. And
Right.
we do it, we traditionally do it every year. It's not a business meeting. It is a business meeting, but it's primarily a budget workshop.
Right, we have the department heads out.
Right.
And as the process goes on, I think, I would like to see more information sessions. I don't think there's anything more to report right now, but I think in a month or so, there's gonna be, or two, there's gonna be a lot more answers
Yeah,
than
because
questions.
there is confusion with some
Of
of the
course.
residents and, you know,
It's a complex process with a lot of different permutations, so, Warrington just went through a very similar thing. And the feedback that I got from talking to them is, as you get through different stages of the process, hold the information sessions and let people come out, I hope the people who came on the 12th benefited, and I hope that we continue to do them until we figure out where we're going, so. Sorry to put that on Mr. Schuster, but yeah. Yeah.
No, I was already planning, again, when we reach a certain.
Yeah, of
point,
course,
we'll-
yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Excuse me, I just heard that on the news that the state has sent money to Warminster for the water. Do you know anything about that? And what,
I believe you're talking about a grant that was received, so yes.
to fix our wells, to put filters or whatever on the wells?
I'm not sure what the terms of the grant are, but we'd have to go ahead and look at that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other public comment? All right.
Mr. Welsh.
Mr. Welsh, how are you, sir?
Good. Bob Wells, Hollowell Avenue.
Yes, sir.
Speaking on volunteer firefighters,
Mhm.
is there a way to bring in Act 127 or 172 to give them relief on their taxes?
Yes, however, we had a discussion with the fire companies about 2 years ago on this. They both thought it was something that we should not consider. They thought it was such a low amount of money that it just wasn't even worth it. So based on that feedback, we did not proceed. Although I think everyone on the board that I had talked to was certainly willing to.
Okay. I mean, it's very little, anything, I mean, relief is relief. I mean, it's.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Act 172, it was relief on your EIT taxes or your property tax.
Okay.
And what it was, the situation was, they would have had to take the bookkeeping of it. And it turned out to be a lot of administrative
Yeah.
work.
Okay.
So for such a little benefit, it would seem like a lot of work to do. I believe I was in a discussion with the
Yes.
fire chief where we talked about that. But good idea, but in the end, it wasn't worth it.
Okay.
For such a small benefit, so much work that would go into it. And
Especially when you're
I
talking from
mean,
the township standpoint, since we're only 10% of it.
Not like they didn't appreciate it, but it was just, in the end, when you weighed it out, it wasn't worth it.
All right, thank you. Any other public comment?
Before we move on, Mr. Chairman, I got a correspondence from Chief Shapiro.
Yes,
He
sir.
believes that number to be $30 per year per household, but Mr. Schuster can drill down on that.
Okay.
Did you?
Mr. Shapiro,
I
Chief
would need you to
Shapiro,
come
I'm
up
sure
though,
you're
so,
watching.
yeah.
I delivered the message for you.
She's got to come to the mic.
Can you just come up, please? Yeah, you can come back up. I want people to be able to hear you.
It's early. It's early, Alan. The time is
Yeah.
yours.
If you don't come up to the mic, they start yelling at me into the booth.
I just wasn't sure, and I got
yeah.
distracted when you two of you were talking.
Yeah.
I just have a question. We expect honesty and trustworthy from the board,
Right.
as much as you expect that from us. But there was something that came up this month, and I obviously, from what I understand, looking at the letter that.
Can you hear her? They can't hear
Can-
you. They can't hear you.
Pull it down.
Yeah.
There you go.
Is that better?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, looking at an email that we got, is that I did file for right to know, so did another neighbor, and another
Mhm.
neighbor appealed it. Now, I filed for right to know, and it was assumed by the solicitor that I was going to appeal it when he wrote a letter back to a judge. I wasn't appealing it, and I did not appeal it.
Okay.
And, because he was denying me to be a party to it, and then he said if I would not appeal it, I could become a party to the other thing. But the whole deal was, I wasn't ever gonna do it. And he, apparently, you people knew about it, or it kind of sounded like that way he wrote to the judge, that you people were aware that he was, with the representation or the blessings of you, he was writing this. Now, all I gotta say is, I found my answer out. At one point, when he was making up the wall, and I want you people just to think about this, and no, that's it. He made a comment that the reason they got investigating the, quote, unsafety
Mhm.
of the height bars was because of things that I had said, and that I was the one that was started it. So I wrote a right to know of what complaints did I put in, or anybody else complaints that they had concerning the height bars. And I wanted to know what were my complaints.
Mhm.
The answer came back denied, which did not surprise me.
Mhm.
And then it was said that there were no written complaints or anything like that. So then there were only verbal or something, I forget the wording. I'm sorry, if I was prepared, I would have
No, I
brought the
know what you
wording
mean.
exact.
The phone calls.
Yeah, verbal.
Yeah.
So I asked the question to the township, what's verbal? Phone calls. So
Mhm.
then I put a right to know in. What phone calls did I make then, since I was the one that made these complaints that you were basing all this
Right.
on? And Mr. Schuster wrote back, denied, because there are no records of any verbal calls. Well, how then could he blame and start the thing saying that I had made these complaints that were starting it? I think the truth and honesty situation's gotta be looked into, because at 1 month, 2 months into here, he didn't know anything. At one time, you said this wasn't top priority for him to look at. And then about a couple months later, he's got it all solved. And he doesn't even know what he's working with, but he's solving it. And I don't think this is called honesty or truth from any of you, if you want to be, you won't reveal to any of us a little bit of what's going in. You want to write it all up and then say, this is what we're going to send to the judge. In a big hurry to erase everything. Why? Let's see if it works. And then we can erase it later. You don't have to, you're talking an executive meeting, and in an executive session, you decided that the height floors had to come down. Well, that's a form of a vote, and that should have been public at the time.
A couple things, because I take exception to a lot of what you said this evening. You come to these meetings on a monthly basis, you cast aspersions, you suggest that people are not being honest, they're not being forthright. We give you the floor every meeting. We allow you to surpass the required 5 minutes. We extend respect.
This has nothing to say with what I
As
said,
to
sir.
the right to know request, I did not make any such assumption. What I said to the Office of Open Records, that you were not a party in interest to Ms. Prouty's request, that you currently had a pending request. See, the devil's in the details. You currently had a pending request at the Township, for which, if it did not go your way, you could then have the benefit of your appellate rights.
You did not say it.
Yes,
that
I
way,
did,
sir.
and it's in an email. It's a series of
I will bring the
emails.
meeting and I can read it to you.
Certainly. I know what I said, and that's exactly what I said.
With all due respect, you don't even know what you were talking about.
And here we go. Every time you get challenged, we start to
Oh, sir,
attack.
Who's attacking?
My floor,
You
my
are
floor,
attacking
my
me.
floor, please.
No.
Can I,
With
everybody
all
have some
due
respect?
You're attacking me.
The bottom line,
Stop attacking
the bottom
me.
line truth of this is that you had the opportunity to appeal to the Court of Common Pleas, to make yourself a party, and you didn't. Since that time, you've been Monday morning quarterbacking, trying to get on the heels of a settlement for which you were not a party to.
Wait a minute, don't make any
You
assumptions
came
about
to a
me
meeting-
Monday
you
morning
came to a meeting
quarterbacking.
early.
You're
Please-
lying now. You don't know anything
right,
what I'm
everybody-
saying.
May I please have the floor, and then you can respond? Allow me to speak. Every meeting you,
truth.
see, once again, every meeting you come, you cast your aspersions, you get your bite out of me, and so be it. But now we're going to talk facts, okay? Because you can't run from them. You had the opportunity. You had the opportunity to make yourself a party to the
And you
settlement.
went to.
And you didn't want to. And since that time, you come to every meeting, and you attempt to Monday morning quarterback that entire choice, okay? So with that being said, the board has authorized me to finalize the deal. They did so in executive, which is fully their right under the Sunshine Law. It is a matter of current litigation and future potential litigation. I'll authorize the terms of that. We will present that to the board for consideration on the 17th of October. They will act on that. They'll authorize me to sign that, at which time we will share that with you and whoever else makes that request.
Basically, it's a done deal when they authorize you to sign. You know it's going through. Wawa's getting what they want. There's no consideration for neighbors or anything of the people here before. And also, you
Again,
just
the only
said-
parties-
with
the
all
only
due
parties-
respect, let me finish a minute.
The only party,
I want
the
to-
only party
I-
to that litigation is the zoning hearing board, is the township, and Wawa.
Well,
You
why
had
didn't
the,
you go
you
back
had
to
the
the zoning
opportunity,
hearing board ever?
because they don't have jurisdiction.
You could.
No, you
Because
can't.
I'm not even talking about that right
No,
now.
but you have
You're
to-
bringing in another subject. You just said that I had the right to appeal and that I've been coming to meetings. This just came back, so therefore there weren't other meetings that I could come to. So you're not even being honest there.
I don't understand what you're saying.
The letter of denial, you thought that the right to know was just done. So you've been saying I've been coming to meetings and Monday morning quarterbacking. That's not true. Don't put words into people's mouths, so be honest.
All right. Mr. McPhelps has a question. Jermaine.
There's a lot of issues going on here, a lot of different concerns, but the light spills, have we looked into that?
The light spills, that's not even within the four corners of what we're attempting to do with Wawa at current. Now, with that being said, if the board would like me to discuss that with Wawa, I can, but keep in mind that we were going back into that settlement agreement and tweaking it based upon the issue relative to the height bars and only the height bars.
But you know what, you based the complaints of the height bars on me. You blamed it on me at the one meeting, and it's on tape, because I was the one that brought it up.
And there was no record. I didn't bring it up. The only thing I talked about was the 16-foot illegal one, uninspected, unimproved, done with no plans. Township didn't know about it, they didn't even want to take it down. They just let it go. And you said you don't want to make Wawa come back and take it down, let them wait till the others come back. But they already came back and took one down before. So see, people, you don't know what you were talking about, and yet you're making all the rules. I don't think this is the way that the board should act. You should know your facts first.
I appreciate the comments, I do. I do have to call for a recess right now. We have somebody who needs a bio break, I apologize for that.
Oh,
But
that's okay, but I just think that when he's gonna say that I've said stuff, he better be honest with it, because the right to know gave us the answer. There are no records of complaints. So how could he say that we complained? That's based on a false thing to
I
start.
understand your position, thank you. All right, I'm gonna call for a quick 10-minute break here. So we will come back at, I'll try 9:30, but we'll see. Thanks. All right, we're back in order. Let's start up with the consent agenda. Mr. Schuster.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight's consent agenda is as follows. Item A, I was just informed by the chairman that there are potential issues with the minutes that might need to be clarified. So item A, the minutes for August 15, 2019 will be pulled from the agenda, and I will add those revised to the next agenda in October. Item,
Mr. Excuse me one second. May I see the new addition to the minutes before it comes out?
of course.
Great.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the minutes are always in the packet
Okay.
ahead of time, so yeah.
Okay,
Absolutely.
thanks.
Item B is 1270 Mearns Road, release number 5 from escrow in the amount of $150,471.41, as recommended by the engineer. Item C is 315 Newtown Court, release number 7 from escrow in the amount of $14,931, as recommended by the engineer. Item D is Wendy's, 813 East County Line Road, release number 1 from escrow in the amount of $40,586.30, as recommended by the engineer. Item E, the Fuge, release number 3 from escrow in the amount of $64,578.95, as recommended by the engineer. Item F is Havishield's escrow closeout from Legal and Engineering in the amount of $188.92. Item G would be awarding the bid for rock salt purchase to Morton Salt in the amount of $48.50 per ton delivered and $48 per ton undelivered. That was a bid done through the Bucks County Consortium, and it is the low bid. Item H is Resolution 2019-24, authorizing the execution of a traffic signal application associated with York Road and Norristown Road. This is for the 911 York Road project, allowing the applicant to apply for their HOP. Item I, also for 911 York Road, is a stormwater facilities indemnity agreement and authorized signature of the HOP stormwater management application to ensure the developer would be responsible for the stormwater facilities. And item J, we had discussed this previously, this would be the first amendment to the Pennsylvania State University concession agreement for the Warminster Community Park facility. That would be a 5-year renewal with the rent due to the township increasing from $22,000 to $26,000 per year.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved with the
Yep. Is there a second?
Second?
Any comment from the board?
Just a quick question, is that the final escrow release for the Fuge? Was that for the parking? It's not? Okay, because I noticed part of that's not done, that's why I asked.
No, it'll always say final on your agenda item.
Okay, and that final though for Havishield?
That's the legal and engineering,
This is,
yes.
you closed out
You already
Havis
did that
last
last
month,
month.
or 2 months ago, I think.
Thank God, that was like 3 years ago.
All right. Any from the public?
That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Seeing none, I'm going to call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Chair votes aye.
I forgot Brian was here.
Yeah, please.
Charlie's Angels.
Charlie's.
Yeah, my
Bosley?
phone's got the battery.
Okay. All right, moving on to the financial report. For that, I'm going to kick it on over to our treasurer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to approval of all transfers and bill lists for the period ending September 19, 2019. The August transfers, the supplemental bill list dated August 29, 2019, in the amount of $757,000. $358.96. Bill list dated September 19, 2019, in the amount of $1,051,788.97.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Monroe with the second. Any questions, comments from the board? From the public? Seeing none, I'm going to call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Carries 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. The August financial statement, Mr. Schuster.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I keep reporting every single month, we are generally tracking to budget. And as I remind you every single month, that does include a sizable deficit, which is not changing. But
Okay.
the financial report is in your packet in case you have any questions.
Any questions?
I just wanted to touch on, again, I really would like to see a budget workshop I know it's a little out in the distance, but
Yep.
Right. I think we're committed to it, so, yeah. Item C, Mr. Schuster.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item C is approval of Resolution 2019-21, which is Budget Amendment Number 4. As you're aware, through the Second-Class Township Code, you can make amendments to the budget after 3 months of the year has expired. This is a relatively smaller one. For the general fund, there is an increase in both revenue and expenditures. They're offsetting for paving, which is going to be occurring in coordination with the municipal authority. That will be our personnel doing the labor and the municipal authority purchasing the materials. Over in the capital, there's also some police transfers that are being made to accommodate some of the payouts for employees who have left and the employees who are being hired. Associated with that, there is a removal in the capital reserve fund of some IT funds that were designated for the police for a project with the school district that never moved forward. So those funds are being moved over to help offset the cost of the new officer this year. In the highway traffic fund, there's offsetting revenue and expenditures for traffic signal knockdown repairs. As you're aware, those things are getting knocked down all the time, and we have to adjust the expenditures and the revenue coming in from the proceeds from the insurance claims as we receive them.
May I have a motion?
so move, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions, comments from the public? Seeing none, I'm going to call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
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 And the chair votes aye. Carries 5-0. We're getting pretty good at this now. All right. Number 7, unfinished business. There is no unfinished business this evening. We're going to move right into new business and snow removal bid. Mr. Schuster.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item A is to authorize advertisement of a snow removal bid for a 2-year period. This is for the contractors that we rely on through plowing. As you know, our Public Works team does a phenomenal job. However, they're limited in both manpower and equipment, so we do have contractors that supplement the workforce.
Got it. Can I get a motion to authorize the advertisement of the snow removal bid?
Motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Monroe with the second. Is there any questions, concerns, comments?
Yeah, do we know what section of the township that the contractors will be plowing as opposed to our own people?
The answer is yes. I don't know if I have it with me.
Can we have it for the next meeting when we award?
I could send it out to the board. There's sections that have been designated for contractors, but I can send it out to you. I'm sorry, I just don't have it on me right now.
Okay.
Any other from the board? From the public? I'm seeing none. I'm going to call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Carries 5-0. All right, next up, item B, the LED project for the library. Mr. Schuster.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you recall, we did the same project for both the township and police side of this building. This is replacing all the lights with LED in association with Pico. This would be for the Warminster Library. The cost is $13,782.58, and the calculated payback period would be less than 18 months. In other words, we would pay for the project with the savings in electricity in 18 months or less.
Got it. Is there a motion to approve the LED project contract?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any questions, comments, concerns for the?
I think this is a really good move for the library. I'm sorry, Dan, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
These are for the lights in the parking lot as well as inside, or
I believe these are mostly internal
internal?
structures. Let me. Yes, these are mostly internal. If you look, there's actual energy savings report in your packet, and I'm seeing these look to be all internal. No, it looks to be mostly internal. There is some external.
I know there
So
was
there's a
issues.
mix.
Okay.
Yep.
Very good.
Mr. Monroe, did you have anything?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
Oh, okay. All right, so any questions, comments, concerns from the public? Seeing none, I'm going to call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
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 And the chair votes aye. Motion carries. All right. We are now to the professionals report. First up, Mr. Schuster.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You have my written report in case there's any questions. Just want to thank everyone that did come out for the e-waste event we had over the weekend through PAR Recycle. They do a phenomenal job, so thanks everyone for getting rid of your old electronics. Also, as I just mentioned in the budget amendment, we will be doing some additional paving in association with the municipal authority as they replace their mains. We'll be coming in and paving right behind them. And lastly, just want to say what a pleasure it was to go and do the Help Bag Hunger event at ShopRite and with Mr. Cowie and family. I know Ms. Frescatore was there as well, as many others showed up. I
Chief
think
Donnelly?
Chief was there. And
Chief Donnelly was bagging groceries.
Judge Finello?
yeah, Judge Fennell. I wasn't there with Judge, but I understand he showed up. Yes, the chief is a much better bagger than I am.
Is that right?
It's been, no,
They were dueling baggers.
No shoplifting while the chief was there.
So it was a fun event, and I appreciate being involved in that. And I do apologize to the woman who did get the bread at the bottom of the bag. I was just learning. But that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Any questions?
Yeah,
Go ahead,
quick
Mr.
question, because we were on the subject of the library. I know as part of the Douchers project, some of that residual was going to go to the library, you know, the lot fees.
Correct. They'll get half of every one of the $2,500 lot fees. So half will go to the library and half will go to Park and Rec.
That's
still.
that's allocated.
Yep. Everything's taken care of already. We have all the line items set in the budget and we're ready to
I
go.
believe it's as they pull a building permit, boom, the money
Correct.
goes.
Yep. So it'll trickle in over the next probably
Excellent.
2 years or so.
Thank you. That's nice.
Yeah. Any other questions? Mr. Monroe, did you have anything for Mr. Schuster?
I do not.
All right. Did we have a young gentleman who was collecting retired flags?
Yes,
Yeah, could you
that's
talk about
ongoing
that?
for an Eagle
Yeah.
Scout project. The information for that is on the township website, and you can see all the locations that he put out for flags that are due to be retired.
Awesome. Great work. All right. Thank you, Mr. Schuster.
Yep.
Moving on to our solicitor's report. Mr. Iannozzi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our written report was included in your packets. I just commend your attention to a couple things. We're in the process of updating our collections for the sewer and trash, and we'll give a report at the next meeting to kind of give you a snapshot as to where we are, where we were. And we've also completed all the Weiss documentation. It's been reviewed by Weiss. They have approved it, and we're just awaiting signature. Thereafter, we'll have it recorded, and we'll be on our way.
Any questions for Mr. Iannozzi?
So Weiss is in the pipeline?
I was
They've always
told
been
by
in.
their attorney that once they get the agreement signed, then the project goes to the construction team and they start scheduling it.
Another one of them empty buildings, boom.
But I don't
gone.
know when it'll get
I'm
scheduled,
reading
probably
about them
next
empty
spring.
buildings, a lot of them gone. I would love to see them put a coming soon sign in the parking lot, would be terrific.
If we ever figure out when they're gonna make an appearance, we can make sure that they do something like that.
Hey, why we're on the subject, well, I guess it would be a question for Mr. Kennard. I forgot to ask the people from Lidl, when do they plan on putting a shovel on the ground?
Not sure, but probably pretty quick at this point. They're finishing up other projects. I know they just put building permits in for the Lidl in Towmenson.
Right.
So hopefully shortly thereafter.
It sounded like they want to start in the fall. I mean, if the weather holds out, we had a staff meeting with them last
Yes,
week.
we're hoping
so
soon.
They actually surprised, I thought it'd be spring, but if the weather holds out, sounds like they want to
Don't
start
pull
another
their building
month or two.
permits immediately, we'd welcome that revenue.
Solicitor's still on the clock, though, just for the record, okay?
So, any other questions for Mr. Iannozzi? Brian, did you have anything for our solicitor?
I do not. I'm good.
All right, excellent. And last but certainly not least, our headliner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Kenner.
You have our September engineers report. You'll have one project that was tabled tonight, or actually taken off the agenda, 167 Kirk Road. That's a three-lot subdivision. They have to work out their sewer design, and they should be ready to go then for preliminary final at the next at your October meeting. Unfortunately, that's all I have in the pipeline. We are not currently reviewing any land development projects that are new. However, I do have some good news that Rosemore Donuts construction has started, or restarted. I guess it had started many years ago. And Wendy's that is being built at 813 County Line Road. They're looking to open here in the next month or so.
Awesome.
They're moving pretty quick.
I saw Steve Harris last night, the attorney for Rosemore Donuts, and I suggested that he put that Rosemore Donuts in his resume. So,
Yeah.
probably longest small project in the history of his firm.
I will tell you that, and I know the administrative staff's already busy, but dealing with all the HOAs as we wrap up a bunch of or transition the construction being done on all the school projects. I know Amanda takes the brunt of that, which I appreciate, and only gets our staff involved in as needed. But all those large school projects will be wrapping up. There's really no dedication on any of those, so you won't see anything other than final escrow releases. But there is a lot of work being done with Amanda and our staff on trying to address the HOA issues that come up as they get closer to the end, and they fear that the developers, money is gone and they're leaving town. So I just want to thank Amanda for taking the lead on that. But it is a lot of work behind the scenes that you guys probably don't hear about too much. So
All right. Well, thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, Amanda. And we're glad we don't hear about it too much. But
Yeah.
and
thank
you mentioned Dowsers. They did pull their. I think they getting ready to pull their first permit on the model.
They're getting close to it. They still have to resubmit their model home plan, and then they owe a revised plot plan as well before they're.
Yeah,
When we got that lot fee from them, plus we got $400 and some thousand in offsite improvement.
Not from Dowchers.
Dowsers.
911 York Road
No.
had a larger fee.
But Dowsers,
Dowchers was $100,000
right?
for curbs and sidewalks, I think, on Ivyland Road.
Turn
And then
lane.
we got $100,000 from them for improvements to the intersection.
Right. That was it. I thought we got more than that.
No, then we got the
Stand
park.
corrected.
We
I
just
thought
got the
we
park
did.
and rec fees
Right.
too.
I thought we got more than that.
Nope.
All right. All right.
Maybe I am confusing them. And
Yeah, they came next to each other, yeah. Any questions for Mr. Kennard?
yeah, while we're speaking about Caddis, how's that moving along?
So I talked to Kevin today. They are.
Mr.
My
Kenner?
assistant.
Mr. Kenner?
Well, I talked to him
Aaron,
today. He
you
called me.
You still get billed though, even though he's not here.
Kevin said they're very close to record plan. He put in the request to start the land development agreements. Caddis, I know, is working on finalizing and submitting the building permits very shortly. If they're not submitted already, they will be in the next few days.
There's going to be a lot of activity here in the next month or
Yeah,
so.
they're gonna start
with the three of
moving
us.
pretty
Nothing
quick.
in the pipeline, but we're going to start seeing some revenues from these ones that have already moved.
Yeah,
off
I
the
think
shelf.
I think Caddis, you should see their building permits this year for their building, most likely, especially if they're, according to the engineer who was submitting the building permits, they should be in within the next week
Anything
or
we
so.
can do to bridge that gap, that massive gap.
Yeah.
till
So
we
you should
figure
see
out where we're
that
going.
building permits at least.
All right. Mr. Monroe, do you have anything for Mr. Kennard?
That was for me. No, I'm good.
Okay, yeah. All right, so I think Mr. Kennard is off the hot seat. Yep. So we're going to move on now to the Township Manager's announcements of upcoming agenda items. Mr. Schuster.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If there's no objection, we'll cancel the October 3rd meeting.
No objection.
At the October 17th meeting, we tentatively have a presentation from the YMCA on the agenda. 167 Kirk Road, which was originally supposed to be on this agenda, will be on that agenda. And finalization of the golf course financing, which you authorized this evening, would also likely be on the agenda for that evening.
All right, thank you. All right, we are now going to move into the second round of public comments. Residents have an opportunity to comment on any items, maximum of 5 minutes. Come on down, Larry.
Larry rules.
How are you, sir?
How you doing, Larry?
I'm doing wonderful, thank you,
Good to see you.
in spite of everything.
two things that I would speak about if I came here. I've been listening on the radio, by the way, on my way down here from where I was up in Buckingham.
Larry, when we're on the radio, I tell them I have long blonde wavy hair, by the way.
They may believe it.
Yeah.
I was concerned that with the fiscal problems that we're having, that some of the environmental things that were researched during the time I was on the EAC have not been pursued. And I'm thinking about the free upgrade to all the facilities on Act 77. And as I recall, there was about $250,000 in savings annually in the proposals, in response to the request for proposals. And apparently that just fell by the wayside. So this is a number of years ago that we could have taken the benefit of that. And I just wondered if, in the matter of fiscal responsibility, that was being looked at in any way.
Typically, it's school districts that take advantage of Act 77 because they have more facilities as opposed to townships, so I don't know.
No, we had two proposals.
Yeah, I know,
as you
Shannon
recall.
Kime was one of them back, I understand that we did, but.
So, you know, we did take a look at this. One of the things when you look at these energy performance contracts is the payback period. And I think that's the big rub here. We know that this is an aging facility, and you always have to put careful thought about how much more money you want to put into this facility if there are plans to possibly move in the future. I decided that we shouldn't move forward. And this is going back a couple of years ago because looking at the payback periods, they were in excess of 10 years, which means if we're only here for 5 more years or 7 more years or whatever it is, we would take a loss on the project. So I didn't think it was the fiscally responsible thing to do at that time.
I've heard that argument for 20 years about this building, by the way. The other thing is much more current. And if anybody's been reading the newspapers, Street Road has been declared one of the worst streets in the United States, with a lot of fatalities and accidents and injuries. And I wondered if there is anything underway to improve that here in Warminster. We have one of the bad intersections.
Yeah,
I think
I
that
think the sections you're talking about were actually not in Warminster, not to
belittle.
Not to belittle, you know, that the street road is incredibly busy. However, it is also a PennDOT road, so ultimately they would have to go ahead and make those changes. We're constantly in discussions with them. I know that there's an effort right now to look at the that entire road and the timings of everything with the lights. So we're always
There
looking
are
at
some
things.
other issues that could be addressed, recalling from my days in the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission, that the township could do that would make the streets safer. So I think that in the light of having probably the worst highway in the United States, that something should move a little faster on that. And I'm glad to hear that you're in consultation, but I think that there is more that can be done. And that's all I'll say at this time.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you, Larry. Good to see you, buddy.
Yeah, I think it's important to point out, Ms. Frescatore and I, with the comp plan, a big part of what you wanted to do was increase the walkability, and we're looking at safety measures. Some of them require a large amount of funding, but they're in the comp plan.
Right.
And you were a big driver behind those, so I wanted to mention that it is not unnoticed. But like with everything else, we need to find, if we want it, we have to pay for it, so, you know, how do we get people from here to there? It's an esoteric question, and it's almost 10 o'clock, so I'm not going to answer it tonight. Is there any other public comment this evening? All right, seeing none, I'm going to move on to supervisor announcements. Live from Irma Road, Mr. Monroe.
I'm here. No, just to reiterate again, thank you for everyone for your patience. Hopefully I'll be back at those meetings in person come December once these medical procedures are completed. So again, it's killing me not to be there, but you'll see me shortly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Monroe. Ms. Frescatore.
No comment.
Thank you. Mr. McKee.
Mr. Monroe, it's good to hear from you, and stay well, my friend. That's all I have.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. McPhillips.
I don't have a comment, but I have a couple announcements from the library.
Sure, go for
Real
it.
quick here. There'll be College Financial Aid Seminar going on Monday, October 7th at 6:30. There's a job searching and employment workshops every Wednesday through October 1st at 1 o'clock. And a 2020 census program Saturday, October 5th at 11 a.m. and Wednesday, November 6th at 6:30. And I'll be at the library next Wednesday, the 25th, meeting with residents. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. McPhillips. To thank everybody for coming out tonight. I thank everybody for their questions, bringing up these items. You know, we have a lot to get through, and I appreciate everybody's candor with us. Please keep coming. And just a real quick happy birthday to my wife. Yeah,
Happy birthday, Ann.
she turns on this weekend. She turns 30 for the nth time, but I definitely married way up. So, happy birthday, babe. With that, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. We're out of here.
All right.